Hello, everyone. Good evening. Okay, so welcome to another day of marathon revision. Today we are starting with British literature. So we are going to, for the next 45 minutes, we are going to revise British literature. Okay, give me a second. People are joining in. I'll start soon. Good evening. Okay, so let's start. Tell me, um, let's start from simple things, from the basic things, actually. Can you tell me what are the elements of the structures of Greek tragedy? Can you name the parts of it? Basic but important. Please type to everyone. I hope the chat is open to everyone. No, it's not. Okay, opening the chat to everyone. Yes, prologue. That's right. What else? Yes. Paradox. Then, yes. Episodes. Stasimon and Exodus. That's correct. Now, as you have already mentioned that, can you mention the three great Greek tragedians? The three great Greek tragedians are, yes, is please type to everyone. Good evening. And Euripides, yes. Also waiting for answers on YouTube. Okay, that's right. Yeah, as you would know, Aeschylus's most important work is the Oresteia, Theban trilogy by Sophocles, and our Euripides, Medea. Now, tell me, who wrote Amphitryon on Menachemi? Amphitryon and Menachemi are works by? Yes, that's correct. That's correct. It is Plautus. Correct, Plautus. And which year did the Norman conquest happen? Norman conquest happened in easy 1066. 1066. Okay. Coming on to Old English literature, can you give me the names of a few prose writers of Old English? Old English prose writers, any one or two names, important ones. Yes. Venerable Bede, that's correct. Anybody else? Do you remember? Yes. Yes, there is. Correct. Yes, there is Venerable Bede, Alfred, Aelfric, also Woolston, and other people. Yes, correct. Okay. Now, which were the three estates during the medieval times? The three estates. Yes. There was the aristocracy, there was the episcopacy, and peasantry. The clergy is the episcopacy. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, tell me, which contemporary of Chaucer was considered the voice of the poor, voice of revolution, chastiser of vices? I thought as soon as I say the first word, you'll all give me answers. It is actually, can you guess? Some of you are typing wrong answers. Voice of the poor. Yeah, I can now see one. Ashwarya has typed the right answer. It is William Langland. Langland was the one who was known as the voice of the poor, chastiser of vices and all that. Remember? Okay. William Langland. Okay. Now, can you name a few of the 15th century Oxford reformers? 15th century. Also make intelligent guesses if you can't, if you really don't know who they are. Think of 15th century and think of the major writers of those times and tell me. There are, let me give you a, yes, there are 15th century Oxford reformers, 15th century. Okay, I'll tell you the names. There is John Colet, Thomas More, a little bit before them. Desiderius Erasmus, yes, all these people. Just so that you have a background. Okay. Now, who were known as the founders of Renaissance in England? Founders of Renaissance in England. Two important names. Inspired, one of them very much inspired by Petrarch. English, yes, yes, it is Wyatt and Surrey. Inspired by Petrarch, Italian. Okay. Wyatt and Surrey. It's Wyatt and Surrey. I hope you're all getting it. More people are joining it. As you join in, please make sure you're answering too. Okay. Now, when were the sonnets of Shakespeare first published and by whom? The sonnets of Shakespeare? Yes. 1609. 1609 by Thomas Thorpe in quarto form. Quarto. Okay. Okay. Now, plays are also important. Remember, the quotes are important from all the plays. So I'll just ask you one because we have to revise everything. Tell me from which play is this? I will speak daggers to her, but use none. Which play is this from? I will speak, good Shreya, yes. Daggers to her, but use none is from Hamlet. I'm sure you know the act and the scene as well. Act and the scene. Act 3, scene 2. Act 3, scene 2. Okay. Now, which are the dark comedies or the problem plays of Shakespeare? The dark comedies, problem plays, yes. Yes. Correct. They are All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, and Troilus and Cressida. Troilus and Cressida. Okay. Moving on. In Shakespeare's contemporary, we also know the university wits. Can you name the Oxford University wits? Oxford. Oxford University wits. Yes. I see some of you are typing. There is Lily, correct. Yes, there's Lily, Lodge, and Peel. Okay. Cambridge also, I hope as I say this, you also think of the Cambridge people. Green, Nash, all of them are in your mind. Now, tell me, yes, Marlowe too. Who called Marlowe's writing Marlowe's mighty line? Marlowe's mighty line. Correct. Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson. Yes. Yes. Ben Jonson. Now, love, wit, face, subtle are all characters from love, wit, face, subtle are all characters from. I see 2 people have answered. Yeah, now more answers are coming. It is The Alchemist. Which year? The Alchemist came out in the year? Which year? 16. 10. 1610. Another important contemporary. Can you tell me who wrote the Holy Sonnets and how many Holy Sonnets were there? Easy. Yes. 19. Okay. 19. 19. John Donne. Correct. Coming to the Jacobean period. Can you tell me which time period is considered the Jacobean period? 16. How much to 16? Yes. Yes. 1603 to 1625. Yes. Okay. Now, who wrote The Blind Beggar of Alexandria? Who wrote The Blind Beggar of Alexandria? It's by Chapman. George Chapman. George Chapman. The White Devil, The Duchess of Malfi, important works by The White Devil, The Duchess of Malfi, John Webster. John Webster. Correct. Okay. Now, Cavalier poets who were there during the period of the Civil War were the supporters of Cavalier poets, were the supporters of supporters, I asked. Supported. Charles the First. Charles the First. Okay. Can you name a few of them? Yes, they were supporters of King. The king is Charles the First. Yes. There is Robert Herrick. There is Thomas Carew, Edmund Waller, John Suckling, and Richard Lovelace. Epithalamium Damonis is by yeah, it is by John Milton. It was written for his friend. On whose death was it written? Charles Diodati. Yes. Yes. Diodati. That's right. Okay. Now, Milton wrote Areopagitica against the Licensing Order Act of which year? Licensing Order of which year? Okay, so many years. So let me tell you, it is 16, but most of you have got it right. It is 1643. In which year did Areopagitica come out? 44. Yeah. Okay. What is considered Milton's left hand? Easy. Prose. Prose. Can you give me the names of few other prose writers of the Civil War period? Prose writers. Milton also wrote prose. Some other names, can you tell me? Yes, that's right. Yes, there is Thomas Brown, Thomas Fuller, Jeremy Taylor, Isaac Walton, and Thomas Hobbes. Correct. Okay. Now, again, important. Let's talk about the metaphysical poets. Again, I want a few of their names. Can you the names of religious metaphysicals? Religious metaphysicals. Yes. There is Herbert, correct? Crashew, correct? And Worm. Yes. George Herbert, Richard Crashaw, and Henry Vaughan. There's also, yes. Yes, that's right. Okay. Now, in Dryden's Macflecknoe, we're coming to the Restoration period. Who is called Macflecknoe? Who is referred to as the son of Flecknoe? Yes, correct. It is Thomas Shadwell. Thomas Shadwell. In which year did Mac Flecknoe come out? Yes. 1680. Yes, 1680. Okay. What about the Hind and the Panther? In which year did he bring out Hind and the Panther? Yes, 1687. Now, Dryden's theory of the heroic play is presented in which work? Dryden's theory of the heroic play. Yes, you're right. Yes, it is The Conquest of Granada. Which year did it come out? The Conquest of Granada came out in 1670. 1670. Now, who called Dryden the father of English criticism? The father of it was Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson. Okay. Who wrote the Restoration comedy? The Country Wife, The Plain Dealer, the Restoration comedies, The Country Wife, The Plain Dealer are all by William Wycherley. William Wycherley. Okay. Now, is it true that our John Bunyan was a preacher and also that he has spent time in prison? Is this true? Yes, it is true. Okay. True. Now, let me ask you something about the Augustine period. In the Augustine period, there were coffee houses, there were clubs, groups. Can you name some of these important clubs or circles that were there during the Augustine period? Yes, the Kit Kat Club, which started from the 1690s onwards. Yes, the Scribblers Club, 1713, established in 1713. Blue Stockings, 1750 onwards. Yes, all of those. There was also Dr. Johnson's Circle, Samuel Richardson's Circle. Yes, all of those. Okay. Now, who wrote an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot? Who wrote an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot? It is Pope. Pope wrote it. Pope. 1735. 1735. Beggar's Opera is by? Beggar's Opera is by? Our Gay. Yes. John Gay. Which Augustine writer wrote The Shortest Way with the Dissenters? Shortest Way with the Dissenters. Yes. Correct. It is Daniel Defoe. Is it true that Jonathan Swift was from Scotland? False. Where was he from? He's Irish. Remember, he has written strongly supporting the Irish cause of freedom and all that. So, important. Irish. Okay. Now, in which year did Johnson's dictionary come out? A very important dictionary before the Oxford dictionaries started was Dr. Johnson's dictionary, 1755. Tell me, is it true that Oliver Goldsmith has worked as a hack writer? Is it true? Oliver Goldsmith. It is true. Okay. The Season, The Castle of Indolence are works by Hack. H-A-K. H-A-C-K. Hack. The Seasons, The Castle of Indolence are all works by, yes, James Thomson. And in which what poet is he considered? Is he a romantic poet? Is he an Augustan poet? James Thompson. He is a transitional poet. That's right. A transitional poet. A transitional. Okay. Elegy on the Death of a Mad Dog is by. Elegy on the Death of a Mad Dog is by. Hmm. You've all mentioned all the other, most of you, elegies, other than, this one is Oliver Goldsmith. Okay. Oliver Goldsmith. But also remember the other elegies. This one is Oliver Goldsmith. Elegy on the Death of a Mad Dog. Now, can you name a few graveyard poets? Graveyard poets. Yes. There's Gray, the very famous Gray. Yes. There's Edward Young. That's right. Yes. There's also Robert Blair, James Hervey, and the others. Okay. Yes, and the others. Now, who wrote Ode to Fear, Ode to Pity, Ode on the Poetical Character, Ode to Simplicity, Ode to Evening, Superstitious Ode, The Passions are all, these are all works by William Collins. William Collins. Okay, correct. Who wrote Kilmarnock volume? And where was this person from? Kilmarnock. Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, both are correct. It is our Robert Burns, and he's a Scottish writer. Okay. Now, in which very famous work of Mary Shelley, as you know, we're reaching the Romantic period. In which very famous work of Mary Shelley do you have allusions to Paradise Lost and Tintern Abbey? Yes, it is Frankenstein. Frankenstein. Correct. Now, let's talk about some periodicals and things like that, okay? From which year to which year did the Blackwoods magazine come out? The Blackwoods magazine. Years. 1817 to 1980. 1870 to 1980. What about the Edinburgh Review? The Edinburgh Review, 1802 to 1929. Okay. In which year did William Wordsworth's The Excursion come out? The Excursion. Remember the prelude to? The Excursion came out in 1814. 1814, correct. 1814. Yes. Who is known as the Sage of Highgate? Sage of Highgate. The Sage of Highgate is our High Coleridge, who was always high because he was taking. Okay. Okay. Yes. Coleridge. Yes, because he was taking opium. Can you name two major critical works by Coleridge? One you know. Yes. It is Biographia Literaria. Another one, he's well known for some lectures. Lectures on Shakespeare and other poets. His lectures on Shakespeare are quite famous, as we all know. Now, Easy question. Can you name some of the second or the most important second generation romantic poets of England? Yeah, there is Byron, there is Shelley, Keats. Yes, yes. Okay. Who wrote English bards and Scottish reviewers? Reviewers. English bards and Scotch reviewers. Sorry, it is Byron. Byron. Yes, Byron. 1809. 1809. Now, um, Adonis by Shelley was for whom? Was written on the death of? Correct. Yes. Now, let me ask you a quote. Can you tell me from which work is this? Poetry is indeed something divine. It is at once the center and circumference of knowledge. It is that which comprehends all science, and that to which all science must be referred. Yes. It is by Shelley. From which work? I'll repeat. Poetry is indeed something divine. It is at once the center and circumference of knowledge. It is that which comprehends all science, and that to which all science must be referred. Yes, that's correct. It is from A Defense of Poetry. A Defense of Poetry. Written in 1820-21 and published in 1840. Okay. In which year did our Keats's Endymion come out? Keats's Endymion. 1918. 1918. 1918. Which year is considered? Sorry, did I say 19? 1818. 1818. Not 1918. In 1918, he wasn't even alive. Sorry. 1818. 1818. Which year is considered Keats's Annus Mirabilis? Correct me when I say things like that. Okay? 1819. 1890. Okay. Now, which critic considered Endymion a failure? Who called Endymion a failure? Yes. It was. Can I have more answers? Yes. Yes, it is Arnold. It is Arnold. Okay. Now, okay. Let's move on to Jane Austen. In which year did Sense and Sensibility come out? Sense and Sensibility, 1811. What about Mansfield Park? Mansfield Park, 1814. Remember, chronology is important when it comes to Austen's works. So remember all the chronology too. Okay. Okay. Who wrote the essay Oxford in the Vacation? Oxford in the Vacation. Yes. If you can't guess by this, you might know him by Price Hospital 5 and 35 years ago. I know all of you know this one. It is our Charles Lamb. Charles Lamb. Correct. The Spirit of the Age is by? The Spirit of the Age is by Hazlitt. Okay. The Great Reform Acts during the Victorian period happened in which 3 years? The Great Reform Acts. 32, correct? 64, correct? And 20 years later, after 64. 84. Yes, correct. Okay. Okay. Let me ask you. Sonnets from the Portuguese was by? Sonnets from the Portuguese. Yes. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Okay. News from Nowhere. News from Nowhere. William Morris. In which year did Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens come out? Nicholas Nickleby. 1838. 1838. Okay. Good. Uriah Heep is a character in Uriah Heep. Yes. David Copperfield. Okay. Where do you see Thornfield Hall? In whose work? In which work? Thornfield Hall. Thornfield Hall. Yes. It is in Jane Eyre. It is in Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre. Charlotte Bronte. Okay. Who wrote Silas Marner? Marner. Silas Marner is by George Eliot. George Eliot. George Eliot. Correct. Now, can you name a few of the Wessex novels by Hardy? Thomas Hardy's Wessex novels. Yes. Far from the Madding Crowd. Yes. 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 The Return of the Native, the Trumpet Major, the Mayor of Casterbridge, Tess of the D'Urberville, Judy Obscure. Okay. In which year did Matthew Arnold's Essays in Criticism come out? Essays in Criticism. 1865. Yes. Who is well known for the sprung rhythm? Who's known for the usage of sprung rhythm? Yes. R. Dear Hopkins, G.M. Hopkins, Gerald Manley Hopkins. Okay. I want to cover everything. That's the reason why I'm not asking too many questions from each of the portions. Okay. Now, let's move on to early 20th century literature. Okay. Now, is it true that our Joseph Conrad refused knighthood? Is this true? Yes. Now, in which of his works do you have the central station and the inner station? Central station and the inner station. It is the Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness. 1902. 1902. The White Man's Burden is a poem by? The White Man's Burden is a poem by Rudyard Kipling. In which work of H.G. Wells do you see Eloise? Eloise. Yes. One correct answer, one wrong answer. Yes. It is the Time Machine. Okay. Time Machine. Time Machine. Time Machine. Yes. The Time Machine came out in 1895. Okay. Who has written river novels? River novels. It is our John Galsworth. The Old Wife's Tale, which came out in 1908, is by The Old Wife's Tale. It's his important work. Yes, it is Arnold Bennett. Arnold Bennett. Now, can you name the Italian novels by Foster E.M. Foster's Italian novels? Yes. Yes, it is. Where angels fear to tread and a room with a view. A room with a view. Now, who has written 51 detective stories featuring one detective, Father Brown? Father Brown. He was himself a Catholic. Yes, it is G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton. Correct. Now, uh, give me the names of a few important war poets. War poets. Few important war poets. Any one or two. Yes, there is Rupert Brooke. Yes, there is Wilfred Owen. Yes, Siegfried Sassoon. All of these. Okay. Goodbye to all that is by Goodbye to all that. Robert Graves. 1929. 1929. In which work of George Bernard Shaw do you have the character Raina? The girl Raina. Yes. Yes. Correct. It is Arms and the Man. 1894. Arms and the Man, 1894. And in which year did Pygmalion come out? Pygmalion, which year? 1912. 1912. Okay. Now, Bartley, Moria, Michael are all characters in. Yes. Riders to the Sea, 1904. 1904. Is it Riders to the Sea? Okay, Riders to the Sea. Now, tell me, is this true? Sean O'Casey's plays were rejected by the Abbey Theatre. He had to face many rejections. Yes, it is true. It is true. Is it true that Virginia Woolf has written the biography of Roger Fry? She has also written a biography of Roger Fry, who was a member of the Bloomsbury Group. Yes, it is true. Yes, it is true. Okay. Now, which work of James Joyce's did he consider his masterpiece? The title was kept hidden, called A Work in Progress. And at this time, he was also assisted by people like Samuel Beckett. Yes, it is Finnegan's Wake. Finnegan's Wake. Correct. Can you name the leadership novels by D.H. Lawrence? Leadership novels, yes. Aaron's Rod, Kangaroo, The Plumed Serpent. Okay, Aaron's Rod, Kangaroo, The Plumed Serpent. The Lady Chatterley's Lover came out in Lady Chatterley's Lover, 1920. Okay. Has Lawrence also published Study of Thomas Hardy? Yes, in 1914. 1914. Okay. Hugh Selwyn Moberly is a work by Hugh Selwyn Moberly is by Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound. Okay. Okay. Is it true that the title of the wasteland is also taken from the myth of the Fisher King? Is this true? Yes, it is true. It is true. Can you give me a name of a religious poem by T.S. Eliot? Any religious poem? Religious poem by Eliot. Yes. 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 The Hollow Man, The Journey of the Magi, Ash Wednesday, and the Four Portraits. Correct. Uh, can you name any of the poets of the 30s? The poets of the 30s. Can I get a few names? Yes. There is Auden. There is Spender, Stephen Spender, W.H. Auden, Christopher Isherwood, Louis MacNeese, and Cecil de Louis. Okay. The Moon and Sixpence, Cakes and Isle, The Razor's Edge are all works by Somerset Maugham. Somerset Maugham. Okay. Who wrote Fernhill, Poem in October? Fernhill, yes. Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas, who is well known for his bog poems. Bog poems, a kind of soil found in Ireland. Seamus Heaney. Seamus Heaney. Okay. Tell me, are they prose writers or okay, no, wait, I'll ask you some words. Tell me who wrote these poems. Serious poetry collections, okay? Serious Concerns, Family Values are poetry collections by which contemporary British, yes, Wendy, uh, who? Wendy who? Okay, correct. Wendy who? Okay, now, Medusa, Mrs. Lazarus, Warming Her Pearls, and Hathaway are all poems by Little Red Cap. Yes, Carol Ann Duffy. Carol Ann Duffy. Correct. Uh, what is common about what kind of works did these people write, or at least one of the genre that they all wrote? Samuel Beckett, N.F. Simpson, Harold Pinter, Edward Bond. Yes. John Arden, Tom Stoppard. They have all written absurd works. Works of uh, absurd. They have contributed to the absurd theater, absurd drama. Okay. Do you know in which year did Waiting for Godot come out? Waiting for Godot? Yes, correct. Okay. Now, who wrote the essay Inside the Veil? Inside the Veil. It is our George Orwell. George Orwell. Ralph, Piggy, Jack, these boys are all characters from Ralph, Piggy, Jack are all characters from William Golding's Lord of the Flies, 1954. 1954. Okay. Who wrote the Malayan trilogy, A Clockwork Orange? Anthony Burgess. Anthony Burgess. Amsterdam, Atonement, Saturday are all works by? Yes. Ian McKeevan. Ian McKeevan. In which year did Salman Rushdie's Shame come out? Shame was published in? Yes, 1983. 1983. Okay, yes, Setu ma'am is here. Whose work is Brick Lane? Monica Ali. Okay. Yes. Paddy Clark, Ha 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 is by, which came out in 1993 is by? Yes, Roddy Doyle. Okay, it is 6:45. Let me make Setu ma'am the host and she will take you through Indian literature. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hi, ma'am.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Chantana. Good evening, Bhagya. Yes. Good evening, Basila. Good evening, all. So, hope you all are preparing well. Yes. Good evening. Good evening, Nidhi. Yes. So, I'll be dealing with Indian English literature, Indian literatures. So, are you all ready? Good evening to those who are attending on YouTube. Yes. So, are you ready? Yes. Good evening. Good evening, Anushka. Okay. So, shall we begin the session? Are you all ready? Okay, here. Yes. Here goes the first question. Here goes the first question. Who wrote a sketch of Anglo-Indian literature? Who wrote a sketch of Anglo-Indian literature? Anglo-Indian literature. Anglo-Indian literature. He was a professor of history at Presidency College, and this work can be considered as the first study of Anglo-Indian literature. Can you remember the writer? Yes. Edward Fairleigh Orton. Edward Fairleigh Orton. He wrote a sketch of Anglo-Indian literature. A sketch of Anglo-Indian literature. Can you remember the year in which Oxford University Press, one of the oldest publishing house in India, got established? Can you remember the year? Can you remember the year? 1912. Exactly. Right answer, 1912. 1912. 1912. Yes. Who wrote? Who wrote? Who wrote the essay? English textbook Indian publisher. English textbook Indian publisher. There, the writer describes about publishing as a social and cultural institution. Publishing as a social and cultural institution that plays a powerful role in shaping ideas. Urvashi Bhutalia, right answer. Urvashi Bhutalia. Urvashi Bhutalia. She wrote English textbook, Indian publisher. English textbook, Indian publisher. Which education commission is also called Magna Carta of English education in India? Can you remember the name of the commission? Yes. Yes. Many are submitting their answers in the chat box. Yes. Right answer, Wood's Dispatch. Can you remember the year of formation? 1854, right answer. 1854. Can you remember the publication year of Nectar in a Sieve by Kamala Markandeya? Nectar in a Sieve by Kamala Markandeya. 100 years after Wood's Dispatch. So, 1954. 1954. The title Nectar in a Sieve has been taken from which work? Coleridge's Work Without Hope. Work Without Hope. Who wrote Sunlight on a Broken Column? Sunlight on a Broken Column. There, the central character is Laila, that is set against partition movement. Atiya Hussain. Atiya Hussain. The title has been taken from which work? The title has been taken from which work? T.S. Eliot's? T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men. Yes, T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men. Right answer. So, yes, T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men. Yes. When was the Indian Education Commission set up? Can you remember the year? When was the Indian Education Commission set up? 1882. 1882. 1882. 1882. Yes. Which commission resulted in the formation of the Indian Universities Act of 1904? Which commission resulted in the formation of Indian Universities Act of 1904? Yes, Indian Universities Commission established in the year 1902. Who was the chairman of Indian Universities Commission? Who was the chairman? Who was the chairman of Indian Universities Commission? Yes, Sir Thomas Raleigh. Sir Thomas Raleigh, he was the chairman of Indian Universities Commission. Indian Abbey Theatre was open to public in which year? Abbey Theatre, it was open for the public in which year? 1904. 1904. And Indian Universities Act came up in which year? 1904. 1904. Which commission is also called Sadler Commission? Which commission is also called Sadler Commission? Because the chairman of that commission, the name of the chairman was Michael Sadler. So can you remember the name of the commission that was also called? Yes. Right answer, Calcutta. Calcutta University Commission. Calcutta University Commission. Calcutta University Commission. It was also called Sadler Commission. Yes. Which commission was focused on vocational education? And that particular commission resulted in the formation of the Polytechnic. Can you remember the name of the commission? This particular commission resulted in the formation of the Polytechnic. Can you remember? Yes, Abbott Wood Committee. Abbott Wood Committee. Abbott Wood Committee. Yes. Which commission was appointed in 1951 under the chairmanship of B.G. Kher? Can you remember the name of the committee? Yeah. Committee on Primary Education. Committee on Primary Education. Right answer, Committee on Primary Education. S. Radhakrishnan Commission or University Education Commission was formed in which year? S. Radhakrishnan Commission or University Education Commission was formed in which year? 1948. T.S. Eliot won the Nobel Prize for Literature in which year? T.S. Eliot won the Nobel Prize for Literature in which year? 1948. 1948. 1948. Which commission is also called Secondary Education Commission? Which commission is also called Secondary Education Commission? And yeah, one of the major recommendation of that commission was the abolition of intermediate class. Intermediate class. Can you remember the name of the commission, which was also called Secondary Education Commission? Mudaliar Commission. Mudaliar Commission. Intermediate class, and it should be combined with the degree class and junior intermediate class. That was one of the major recommendations of Mudaliar Commission. Which commission is also called National Education Commission? Which commission is also called National Education Commission? It's this particular commission, it was emphasized on teacher education. So can you remember the name of the commission? Kothari Commission. Yes, Kothari Commission. It was also called National Education Commission. National Education Commission. Yes. National Education Commission. Right answer. Right answer. Yes, correct. Correct. Yes. So, who wrote the play A Journal of 48 Hours? It was, this particular play is about the armed conflicts. Who wrote the play A Journal of 48 Hours? About an imaginary uprising against British in 1945. Can you remember the name of the play? Can you remember the writer? Yes, Kailas Dutt. Kailas Dutt. He wrote A Journal of 48 Hours. A Journal of 48 Hours. A Journal of 48 Hours of the year 1945. Of the year 1945. Yes. Yes. Published in the year 1835. Published in the year 1835, and the title of the play it is A Journal of 48 Hours of the year 1945. Yes. Who wrote Remarks on Settlement in India by Europeans? Remarks on Settlement in India by Europeans. Can you remember the writer who wrote the essay? Remarks on Settlement in India by Europeans. And that particular essay, the writer argued that educated Europeans should be encouraged to settle in India. Yes. Rajaram Mohan Roy. Rajaram Mohan Roy. Rajaram Mohan Roy wrote this particular essay. And his essay, Lecture on English Education, was dedicated to whom? He wrote an essay in the year 1823 as a response to H.H. Wilson's idea of establishing a Sanskrit college in Calcutta. And he wrote this particular essay, Lecture on English Education. It was addressed to Lord Amherst. Yes, Lord Amherst, then Governor General of India. Yes. Yes. And this particular essay, it was also called Letter to Amherst. Letter to Amherst. Okay. Who wrote Mask of Conquest, published in the year 1989? It can be considered as a classical work in post-colonial studies. Who wrote the work? Gauri Vishwanathan. Yes, Gauri Vishwanathan wrote Mask of Conquest. Mask of Conquest. Mask of Conquest. That is a work written by Gauri Vishwanath. Who wrote the essay collection, The Lie of the Land? Who wrote the essay collection, The Lie of the Land, English Literary Studies in India? An Indian feminist author who wrote the essay collection, The Lie of the Land, English Literary Studies in India. It addresses the issue of English literary studies in India. Can you remember the name of the writer? Rajeshwari Sundararajan. Right answer. Rajeshwari Sundararajan wrote this particular essay collection where she highlighted the importance of English literary studies in India. Who wrote Dissimilar Twins, Language and Literature? Who wrote Dissimilar Twins, Language and Literature, where she described about the linguistic features associated with English literary studies? Can you remember the writer? Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Dissimilar Twins, Language and Literature? Right answer, Rukmini Bhaya Nair. Yes, Rukmini Bhaya Nair. Yes. Right answer. Yes. Who first translated Kalidasa's Abhijnana Shakuntalam to English? Who first translated Kalidasa's Abhijnana Shakuntalam to English? Who was an Indologist, translator? Yes, William Jones. Who first translated Rigveda to English? Who first translated Rigveda into English? Who first translated Rigveda into English? Who was the secretary to the Asiatic Society of Bengal? Yes, Horace Hayman Wilson. Horace Hayman Wilson, who first translated Rigveda into English. Who first translated Bhagavad Gita into English? Who first translated Bhagavad Gita to English? Charles Wilkins. Yes, right answer, Charles Wilkins. And he was one of the founding members of the Asiatic Society. Yes, Charles Wilkins. Right answer, Charles Wilkins. Who translated You Are Anandamurthy Samskara to English? You Are Anandamurthy's novel. It was originally written in Kannada. Who translated the work? Who wrote the poetry collection, The Striders? Who wrote 300 Ramayanas essay? A.K. Ramanujam. A.K. Ramanujam. Second Sight, Striders, all these are poetry collections by A.K. Ramanujam. And he was a translator as well. And he translated You Are Anandamurthy Samskara to English. English. Who translated Evam Indrajit? Badal Sarkar's Evam Indrajit to English. Can you remember the name of the writer who translated Badal Sarkar's Evam Indrajit? One of the plays, Indian plays that discussed about existential aspects. Postmodernist play. Yes, Girish Karnad. Girish Karnad translated Evam Indrajit to English. It was originally written in Bengali language by Badal Sarkar. Yes. Right answer. Correct. Who wrote the essay? Who wrote the essay towards the concept of a new nationhood? Towards the concept of a new nationhood, language and literatures in India. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote towards the concept of a new nationhood? Towards the concept of a new nationhood. I can give you a clue. Who wrote Samskara? Who wrote Bharatipura? Who wrote Bhava? All these are novels written by You Are Anandamurthy. And You Are Anandamurthy wrote this particular essay towards the concept of a new nationhood. Towards the concept of a new nationhood. Right answer. Right answer. Who wrote Realism and Reality, describing the emergence and growth of the novel in India during the mid-19th and early 20th century? This can be considered as one of the critical works on Indian English novel. And who wrote Realism and Reality, describing the emergence and growth of the novel in India during the mid-19th and early 20th century? Meenakshi Mukherjee. Right answer. Meenakshi Mukherjee. Correct. Meenakshi Mukherjee, she wrote Realism and Reality. Who wrote Swan and the Eagle? Who wrote Swan and the Eagle? Essays on Indian English Literature. Who wrote Swan and the Eagle? Essays on Indian English Literature. A critical study of Indian English literature encompassing poetry, autobiography, novel, and drama. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Swan and the Eagle? C.D. Narasimhaya, right answer. C.D. Narasimhaya, who wrote Swan and the Eagle. That is again a collection of essays on Indian English literature. Indian English literature. Yes. Indian English literature. Yeah, Moving Frontiers. Yes, that is again another work by C.D. Narasimhaya. Who wrote the patriotic poem, Harp of India? Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote the patriotic poem, Harp of India? Harp of India. He had written other poems such as The Fakir of Janghira, Song of the Hindustani Minstrel. So can you remember the name of the writer who wrote the patriotic poem Harp of India? Henry de Rossio. Henry de Rossio. Henry de Rossio wrote Harp of India, that can be considered as a patriotic poem by Henry de Rossio. Who wrote the blank verse epic Meghnath Bodh Kavya? Meghnath Bodh Kavya. Meghnath Bodh Kavya. Who wrote Sharmishta? Who wrote Is This Called Civilization? Meghnath Bodh Kavya. All these are works written by Michael Madhusudan Dutt. Yes, Michael Madhusudan Dutt. Michael Madhusudan Dutt, who wrote Meghnath Bodh Kavya. Meghnath Bodh Kavya. Yes. Right answer. Who wrote Visions of the Past? That is about the Christian theme of temptation and fall. And this is written in Miltonic blank verse. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Visions of the Past? Visions of the Past. Yeah. Mission. Michael Madhusudan Dutt. Right answer. Michael Madhusudan Dutt. Who wrote Bianga or the Young Spanish Maiden? Who wrote Bianga or the Young Spanish Maiden? That can be considered as an unfinished English novel by Toru Dutt. Yes, Toru Dutt. Right answer. Who wrote Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan? Who wrote Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan? Collection of poems. This can be considered as translations from Sanskrit literature, again by Toru Dutt. Yes, Toru Dutt. Who wrote Legends of Vancouver short story collection? Who wrote Legends of Vancouver short story collection? Can you remember the writer who wrote? Pauline Johnson, right answer. Pauline Johnson, who wrote Legends of Vancouver short story collection. Yes. Who wrote Muktadara? That's a political play by. Who wrote Muktadara, political play by? Yes. Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore. Published in the year? Published in the year? The same year in which Wasteland got published. Herman Hesse's Siddhartha got published. Wasteland got published. Jacob's Room got published. Aaron's Road. Ulysses. Yes. Muktadara got published in the year 1922. Who wrote the political play Muktadara? Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore. Yes. Rabindranath Tagore. Who edited Gujarati monthly Navjeevan? Navjeevan, Gujarati monthly was edited by? Yes, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi. Which work by Mahatma Gandhi is written in the form of a dialogue between editor and reader? Which work by Mahatma Gandhi is written in the form of a dialogue between editor and reader? Hind Swaraj, right answer. Remember, it was written in Gujarati. It was written in Gujarati. Who translated the story of my experiments with truth to English? Who translated the story of my experiments with truth to English? Translators again. It's a very important area. You need to make a list of translators because many times they've asked questions in the form of master following questions. So please make a list. And who translated the story of my experiments with truth to English? Mahadev Desai, right answer. Mahadev Desai, right answer. Yes. Who wrote The Life Divine? Who wrote The Life Divine? It discussed about his spiritual. Yeah, Sri Aurobindo wrote The Life Divine. The Life Divine. Savitri is based on which epic? Savitri is based on which epic? Can you remember Savitri? Savitri, that's an epic written by Sri Aurobindo. It's based on, it is an epic poem written by, yeah, it's based on Mahabharata. What is the subtitle? What is the subtitle of Savitri? What is the subtitle? A legend and a symbol. Yes. Remember, it's written in the form of an epic poem. It's written in 12 books, the manner of the epic. It's written in blank verse because once there was a question, which of the following statements about Savitri is not correct? So please make sure to learn, remember some of the features of the work. That is again important. Yes. Paradise Lost published in 12 books. In which year? Paradise Lost published in 12 books in which year? 1674, the year in which Milton died. Paradise Lost published in 10 books in which year? 1667. Right answer, 1667. 1667. What is the sequel to the autobiography of an unknown Indian? What is the sequel to the autobiography of an unknown Indian? Niratsi Chowdhury's autobiography of an unknown Indian. What is the sequel? What is the title of the sequel? Thy Hand Great an Ark. And Thy Hand Great an Ark, the title has been taken from which work? Pops Dunciad. Right answer. Pops Dunciad. Yes. Can you remember the name of the essay, which is part of the autobiography of an unknown Indian? He wrote an essay which got published as part of the autobiography of an unknown Indian. Niratsi Chowdhury wrote an essay that also got published along with this book, this work. The objective method in history. Right answer. The objective method in history. The objective method in history. Yes. The objective method in history. Who wrote The Queen's Rival? Who wrote The Queen's Rival? Who wrote The Golden Threshold? Who wrote Bangle Seller's poem? All these are works written by Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu. Who wrote Indian Weaver's poem? Who wrote Indian Weaver's poem? By Sarojini Naidu. Who wrote the poem Indian Women? There he describes about the suffering of Indian women, and there he coined the phrase triple baked suffering. Shiv K. Kumar. And can you remember the anthology in which this particular poem appeared? Can you remember the anthology in which this particular poem appeared? Cobwebs in the Sun. Indian Women poem by Shiv K. Kumar is part of the anthology Cobwebs in the Sun. Cobwebs in the Sun. Who wrote Articulate Silences? Who wrote Articulate Silences? Articulate Silences. Again, that's a poetry collection by Shiv K. Kumar. Shiv K. Kumar. Can you remember the anthology for which he won the Sahitya Academy Award? Sahitya Academy Award. Trap Falls in the Sky. Right answer. Trap Falls in the Sky, for which he won the Sahitya Academy Award. Can you remember the name of the novel? He wrote a novel. He wrote a novel. All these are poetry collections by Shiv K. Kumar. Can you remember the title of the novel by Shiv K. Kumar? The Bond's Prayer. The Bond's Prayer. Yes. Who wrote a collection of autobiographical poems called Broken Columns? Broken Columns. Broken Columns. Broken Columns, that is a collection of autobiographical poems by Shiv K. Kumar. Shiv K. Kumar. Yes. Who wrote the essay Poetry and Philosophy? 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 Poetry and Philosophy, that is an essay written by, who wrote Background Casually, who wrote Poet Lover, Bird Watcher, who wrote Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S., who wrote Time to Change and other poems. All these are poetry collections by Nissim Ezekiel. And remember, Nissim Ezekiel had also written plays as well as essays. Yes, and Poetry and Philosophy, that is an essay by Nissim Ezekiel. Essay by Nissim Ezekiel, yes. Who wrote the poem Background Casually? Who wrote the poem Background Casually? Yes, Nissim Ezekiel. Who wrote the play The Sleepwalkers? The Sleepwalkers. Ganguly is the central character in Sleepwalkers, and the play is a one-act play. And the play is a satire on the liberal, modern, elite class. Nissim Ezekiel, right answer. Who wrote the play Don't Call It Suicide? Don't call it suicide. That can be considered as a domestic tragedy by Nissim Ezekiel. Can you? Yes. Don't call it suicide. Yes. Who wrote the poetry collection Jejuri, for which he won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize? And Jejuri consists of how many poems? Arun Kolatkar. Yes, Arun Kolatkar. And it consists of how many poems? 31 poems. 31 poems. 31 poems. Who wrote? Who wrote the long poem Rough Passage? It is divided into 3 sections. Who wrote the long poem Rough Passage? R. Parthasarathi. Right answer. Can you remember the 3 sections? Can you remember the 3 sections of Rough Passage? Exile, trial, and homecoming. Exile, trial, and homecoming. Exile, trial, and homecoming. Can you remember the 3 sections into the lighthouse? Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. 3 sections. Please cross connect and study. Yes. Windows, Time Passes, To the Lighthouse. Can you remember the 3 sections in Hard Times, Charles Dickens' Hard Times? Sowing, reaping, and garnering. Sowing, reaping, and garnering. Yes. And Rough Passage, remember, that's written by R. Parthasarathi. That is a long poem that is divided into 3 sections: Exile, Trial, and Homecoming. Homecoming. Are you getting bored? Are you getting bored? Are you enjoying the session? It's okay even if you can't answer, but please try to cross connect and revise. That will really help you in remembering. Okay, so yes. So who's the central character in Mulkraj Anand's short story collection, Baba's Trade Union? That's a short story written by Mulkraj Anand. Chandu. Yes, Chandu. He forms a Baba's Trade Union towards the end. Yes, Chandu. Yes. Who wrote Waiting for the Mahatma? That can be considered as the only political novel by R.K. Narayan. Right answer, R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan. Can you remember the publication year of Kandapura? Can you remember the publication year of Kandapura? 1938. Who is the narrator in Kandapura? Who is the narrator? Achaka. Achaka is the narrator in Kandapura. Kandapura, the novel opens in which year? The novel published in the year 1938, but the novel opens in which year? 1930. I.A. Richards' Practical Criticism got published in which year? William Empson's 7 Types of Ambiguity got published in which year? 1930. And Kandapura opens in which year? 1930. Yes. 1930. Which work by Raja Rao, where the title means illusion and reality? Can you remember the name of the work where the title means illusion and reality? It is about a semi-autobiographical account of the marriage between 2 intellectuals, Ramaswamy and Maitland, a French woman. Serpent and the Rope. Right answer. Serpent and the Rope. Serpent and the Rope. Serpent and the Rope. Which work by Raja Rao was influenced by Dostoevsky? Can you remember the name of the work? There, the central characters. The central character is Padmanabh Iyer. Comrade Kirlov. Yes, Comrade Kirlov. Yes. Who is the central character? Can you remember the name of the central character in Sunlight on a Broken Column? We discussed this work. Can you remember the name of the central character in Sunlight on a Broken Column? Yes, Laila. Laila, can you remember the name of the central character in Nectar in a Sieve? Nectar in a Sieve. Rukmini. It is the story is told through the perspective of Rukmini. Rukmini. Yes. Rose and Sonali. These two characters appear in which work? Rose and Sonali. Nayantara Segal's Rich Like Us. Rich Like Us. The setting is in Delhi. Nanda Kaul appear in which work? Nanda Kaul. Nanda Kaul, Raka, Iladas. These three characters appear in which work? Fire on the Mountain. Right answer. Fire on the Mountain. Kajoli is a character in which work? The story is narrated through the perspective of Kajoli. Can you remember? So Many Hungers. Right answer. So Many Hungers by? Who wrote So Many Hungers? Babani Bhattacharya. Yes. So Many Hungers by Babani Bhattacharya. Babani Bhattacharya wrote So Many Hungers. So Many Hungers. Who wrote Inkulab? Who wrote Inkulab? Novel Inkulab. Who wrote the novel Inkulab that is set against the Indian independence movement? K. Abbas. Who wrote the play Inkulab that is set against the Naxalite movement? Asif Karimboy. Yes. Asif Karimboy. What is the subtitle of the novel Inkulab? What is the subtitle? First great novel of the Indian Revolution. That is the subtitle of novel Inkulab by Asif Karimboy. First great novel of the Indian Revolution. And yeah, that is the novel by K. Abbas. K. Abbas. And the play Inkulab written by Asif Karimboy. Can you remember the subtitle? It's a play in how many acts? It's a play in how many acts? 3 acts. That is the subtitle of play Inkulab by Asif Karimboy. A play in 3 acts. Who wrote? Who wrote Gandhi quartets? Who wrote Gandhi quartets? Who wrote Gandhi quartets? Can you remember the writer? The Crown and the Loincloth, The Salt of Life, The Triumph of the Tricolor, Asadi, all these 4 works constitute Gandhi Quartet. Chaman Nahal, yes, right answer, Chaman Nahal. Chaman Nahal. Chaman Nahal. Who wrote Raj Quartets? Who wrote Raj Quartets? That is set against the backdrop of colonial India. Paul Scott. Paul Scott. Can you remember those 4 works? The Jewel in the Crown, The Jewel in the Crown, The Day of the Scorpion, The Day of the Scorpion, The Towers of Silence, A Division of the Spoils. A Division of the Spoils. These 4 works constitute the Raj Quartet. Raj Quartet. Day of the Scorpion. You can connect it with who wrote Night of the Scorpion? Poem by Nassim Esakil. Right answer. Yes. Nassim Esakil. Yes. Who wrote the non-fictional work Indian Philosophy? Who wrote the non-fictional work Indian Philosophy? Indian Philosophy by Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. Who wrote the essay Poetry and Philosophy? Who wrote the essay Poetry and Philosophy? Nassim Esakil. Right answer. Right answer. Yes. Who was associated with the journals, like scholarly academic journals, the poetic self, and women in romanticism. These are 2, not journals, 2 scholarly academic studies. 2 scholarly academic studies. Who was associated with these 2 works? The poetic self, women in romanticism. I can give you a clue. She was an Indo-American writer. Fault Lines is the title of her autobiography. Nampalli Road, Manhattan Music. These are the novels written by Meena Alexander. Remember, Meena Alexander, she also wrote 2 works on criticism. 2 works on criticism. titled The Poetic Self. The Poetic Self. Then Women in Romanticism. Women in Romanticism. These are two works written by Meena Alexander on criticism. On criticism. Who is associated with Playpen Theatre Group? Who is associated with Playpen Theatre Group, centered in Bangalore, Karnataka? Mahesh Dattani. Mahesh Dattani is associated with Playpen Theatre Group. Who was associated with Shatabdi Theatre Group? Shatabdi Theatre Group. Shatabdi Theatre Group. Badal Sarkar. Yes, Badal Sarkar. What is the subtitle of Dance Like a Man? Who wrote Dance Like a Man? Mahesh Dattani wrote Dance Like a Man. Remember Ratna, Jairaj, Amritlal Parikh. There he criticized on the gender stereotyping. Mahesh Dattani wrote Dance Like a Man. What is the subtitle? What is the subtitle? Dance Like a Man. It's subtitled A Stage Play in 2 Acts. A Stage Play in 2 Acts. That is a subtitle. Yes. What is the subtitle of Tughlaq? Girish Karnad's Tughlaq. Can you remember the subtitle of Girish Karnad's Tughlaq? A play in 13 scenes. A play in 13 scenes. What is the subtitle of Nagamandala? Nagamandala. Nagamandala is subtitled. It's an easy. You can associate with the work. Play with the cobra. Play with the cobra. Play with the cobra. Yeah, play with the cobra. Yes, play with the cobra. Who wrote the Preface to Untouchable? Who wrote the Preface to Untouchable? Who wrote the Preface to Untouchable? Yes. E.M. Forster. Who wrote the introduction to Gitanjali? Who wrote the introduction to Gitanjali? W. Bates. W. Bates wrote the introduction to Gitanjali. And who wrote the Preface to Untouchable? E.M. Forster. E.M. Forster. Who wrote the non-fictional work Curries and Other Indian Dishes? Curries and Other Indian Dishes. Remember, he also wrote works on criticism. He also wrote works on art criticism. He was an artist as well, and he wrote works on art criticism and Curries and Other Indian Dishes. That is about the culinary culture of India and other South Asian countries. Curries and Other Indian Dishes. That's by Mulk Raj Anand. Right answer by Mulk Raj Anand. Mulk Raj Anand. Nariman Vakil is a character in which work? Nariman Vakil. Nariman Vakil is a character in which work? Who is a widower? Who is a widower? By Parsi Canadian writer. Family Matters. Family Matters. Family Matters by Rohinton Mystery. Rohinton Mystery. Yes. Who wrote the children's work Village by the Sea? Village by the Sea. That's a children's work by Village by the Sea. Anita Desai. Yeah, it is centered. It is set in a small village called Tul. It is set in a small village called Tul. Who wrote Fasting, Feasting? Who wrote Fasting, Feasting? Uma is a central character in Fasting, Feasting. Anita Desai. Anita Desai. Yes, Anita Desai. Anita Desai. Yes. Cindy Oberoi is a character in which work? Here the novel deals with the themes of alienation and existentialism. Can you remember the name of the work where Cindy Oberoi is a character? The writer had also written other works such as The Strange Case of Billy Bishwa's The Last Labyrinth. Arun Joshi. Arun Joshi. Arun Joshi wrote The Foreigner. There the central character is Cynthia Oberoi. Cynthia Oberoi. Yes. Cynthia Oberoi. Urmila, Meera, and Shakuntala. They are characters in which work? Urmila, Meera, Shakuntala. All these are characters in which work? It is again a woman-centered story. Urmila. Urmila is grieving over the death of her daughter Anu. Binding Wine. Binding Wine. Binding Wine. Who wrote Binding Wine? Who wrote Binding Wine? Shashi Deshpande. Jaya is a character in which work of Shashi Deshpande? Jaya is a character in which work? Jaya. That long silence. That long silence. Jaya, Jitu, Om Prakash, all these are characters in which play Indian English, Indian play? Harvest by Manjula Padmanabhan. Manjula Padmanabhan wrote Harvest, and there you can find characters such as Jaya, Jitu, Om Prakash, and Jaya is the central character in Shashi Deshpande's That Long Silence. That Long Silence. Who wrote The Dark Holds No Terrors? There's a central character is a successful lady doctor called Sarita. Shashi Deshpande. Shashi Deshpande. Yes. Who wrote? Who wrote In Times of Zeesh? Who wrote In Times of Zeesh? That is a work by? That is a work by? In Times of Zeesh. That is a work by? Who wrote Thousand Faces of Night? That's the clue. Who wrote Thousand Faces of Night? Where the novel revolves around three generations of women. Geeta Hariharan. And remember Geeta Hariharan's fourth novel. That is In Times of Zeesh. That is a novel by Geeta Hariharan. So here goes the last question. Who wrote the poetry collection Mappings? Who wrote the poetry collection Mappings? Mappings. Who wrote Golden Gate? Golden Gate is set in the 1980s. Who wrote the poetry collection Mappings? Vikram Seth, right answer. Who wrote? Who wrote the travelogue Journey Without Maps? Journey Without Maps. That's a travelogue by Graham Greene. Graham Greene. Who wrote Map Maker poetry collection? Who wrote Map Maker poetry collection? K.K.N. Daruwala. K.K.N. Daruwala. Yes. K.K.N. Daruwala. Yes. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Aksa, are you here? I hope you
Yes.
enjoyed today's session. Aksa, yes. Good night, everyone. Good night, everyone. I'll make Aksa as the host. I hope you so much, everyone. Aksa, I made you the host. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone. Hi. Are you tired? Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. So shall we revise American literature? We'll revise American literature for a while. Okay. I know there might not be so many questions from American literature as such, but let's just revise the main authors, their works, etc. Okay. So shall we start? Okay. So we'll start with how many questions come from American literature. We cannot be sure about that, Aishwarya, but usually it is less than 5. Usually, but we never know. So let's just revise. Okay. Okay, so we'll start with a very easy question. Blanche is a character from which work? Blanche is a character from which work? Yes, it's A Streetcar Named Desire. A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams, not Arthur Miller. It is Tennessee Williams. Okay, Blanche is a character from A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Okay. Now, Lamport Strather is a character from Lamport Strather. Lamport Strather is a character from Yes, The Ambassador. Lamport Strather is a character from The Ambassador. Yes, okay. Now, this one is a little difficult. There is a character named Moses. This character is in the work Herzog, Herzog, Herzog. This work is written by, do you know the author of this work? Yes, it is Saul Bellow. Okay, Saul Bellow. Yeah. Now, Billy Loman is from All My Sons. Is it true? Billy Loman is from All My Sons? No. Okay, so Billy Loman is from which work? Billy Loman is from The Death of a Salesman. Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. Yes, very good. Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. Okay. Now, who wrote the New York trilogy? Who wrote the New York trilogy? Paul Auster. New York trilogy is by Paul Auster. Yes. Okay. Good fences make good neighbors. This is a line from Good fences make good neighbors. This is a line from Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Yes, Robert Frost. Okay. Do you know the collection to which Mending Wall belonged to? The collection of which Mending Wall is a part? Mending Wall belongs to the collection. Okay, I'll give you a clue. It has Boston in its name. Boston. Mending Wall belongs to the collection. Yes, that's correct. North of Boston. North of Boston by Robert Frost. Okay. Now, yes, north of Boston. Okay. There was this Treaty of Paris, which led to the emergence of the United States. Do you know when was the Treaty of Paris? Treaty of Paris, which led to the emergence of the United States? The year in which Treaty of Paris happened? Think. Treaty of Paris. (1777) is close. 1783. 1783. Okay. Treaty of Paris was in 1783. Okay. Who was the author of the first American work, A True Relation of Virginia? A True Relation of Virginia. Who's the author of this work? Who is the author of this work? A True Relation of Virginia. Yes. What Smith? John Smith. John Smith. So the author of A True Relation of Virginia is John Smith. Okay. Now, so do you know who developed or who talked about green anarchism? Who talked about green anarchism? Green anarchism, which basically means you go away from the industrial life, from the city life, and you take a resort in nature. Do you know who talked about green anarchism? He was one of the transcendental authors. Yes, it was Thoreau. Yes, Thoreau talked about green anarchism. In which work? In which work of Thoreau did he talk about green anarchism? Yes, Walden. In Walden, Thoreau talked about green anarchism, which basically means you take a resort in nature away from city life. Okay. Who coined the metaphor, the transparent eyeball? The transparent eyeball is a metaphor coined by Emerson. Emerson in his essay titled Nature. Yes, in his essay titled Nature. Okay. Do you know what the transparent eyeball was? The transparent eyeball. Do you know what it means? It is a view of life which is basically absorbent in nature. Rather than reflective, you absorb everything you see in nature. That is Transparent Eyeball by Emerson in his essay Nature. Okay. Now, a psyche, this is a quote. A psyche from the regions which are Holy Land. This is the last line of which poem by Edgar Allan Poe? A psyche from the regions which are Holy Land. This is the last line of which poem of Edgar Allan Poe? Listen to the line once more. A psyche from the regions which are Holy Land. Yes, to Helen. This is the last line of To Helen by Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. Yes, To Helen. Now, this is also a line spoken by a character of Herman Melville. It goes like this. And goodbye to you too, old rights of man. Do you know which character of Herman Melville spoke this line? And goodbye to you too, old rights of man. This is the line spoken by a character of Herman Melville. Do you know the character? Yes, very good. It is Billy Budd. It is Billy Budd. Okay. Do you know what the rights of man here is? Rights of man. He's addressing someone. Rights of man. Who is this rights of man? Rights of man is the name of a ship. Okay. Rights of man is the name of a ship. This is the line spoken by Billy Budd. This is a character of Herman Melville. Okay. So, who wrote New York Trilogy? Who wrote New York Trilogy? Paul Auster. Yes. Okay. Treaty of Paris was in the year? Treaty of Paris was in the year 1783. Okay. Bending Wall belongs to the collection. Bending Wall belongs to the collection. North of Boston. Very good. Yes. Green anarchism was discussed by Green anarchism. Thoreau. Yes. A True Relation of Virginia was written by A True Relation to Virginia. John Smith. Yes. Okay. Now, forget all that. 1803 to 1882 is the timeline of which transcendental author? 1803 to 1882 is the timeline of which author? Yes, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson. Okay. So, I'll tell you the title of the work. You tell me the year in which it was published. Okay. Self-reliance. Tell me the year of. Yes. Self-reliance was published in the year 1841. Self-reliance was published in the year 1841. Okay. When was Nature published? Nature 1836. Okay. 1836. Okay. The oversoul and self-reliance. Which came first? The oversoul and self-reliance. Which came first? Think. The oversoul and self-reliance. Which came first? Yes, it was in the same year. Both of these works were published in 1841. Okay. Both Self-Reliance and The Oversoul was published in the year 1841. Nature was published in the year 1836. Okay. The American Scholar. The American Scholar. American Scholar 1837. Okay. 1837. Okay. Now, who is elder, Emerson or Thoreau? Who is elder, Emerson or Thoreau? Sure? Is it Emerson? Yes. Okay. Emerson was born in the year 1803. Thoreau was born in the year 1817. Okay, so Emerson is elder. Okay. Now, do you know the year of publishing of Walden? When was Walden published? Walden was published 1854. Yes, 1854. Civil disobedience. Civil disobedience. When was civil disobedience published? 1849. Yes, 1849. Okay. When was Wood's Dispatch? 1854. Okay. Same as Walden. That's correct. Yes. Okay. Now, Natty Bumbo is a character in which series of work? Natty Bumbo. Yes, Natty Bumbo is a character by James Fenimore Cooper. It belongs to which series? Leather Stocking Tales. Yes, Natty Bumbo is a character from Leather Stocking Tales. Contains how many novels? Leather Stocking Tales contain how many novels? 5. 5. It is a penthology. Okay. It's a penthology. It is written by James Fenimore Cooper. Natty Bumbo is a character created by James Fenimore Cooper. Okay. How is James Fenimore Cooper significant? What is he associated with? He's associated with something. What is he associated with? It starts with F. Yes, frontier. Frontier. He's a frontier writer, James Fenimore Cooper. Okay. Now, do you know the subtitle of The Last of the Mohicans? Subtitle of The Last of the Mohicans. Subtitle of The Last of the Mohicans. A narrative of 1757. A narrative of 1757. Okay. When was Self-Reliance published? When was Self-Reliance published? 1841. Which other work was also published in 1841? The other work which was published in 1841? Oversoul. Yes. Okay. Nature was published in Nature 1836. What was published in 1837? 1837. The American scholar. The American scholar. Yes. American scholar. Okay. So we'll keep revising these years. Now, the play Strange Interlude was by Strange Interlude. It's a play written by. Is it by Hemingway? No, it is by Eugene O'Neill. Strange Interlude is by Eugene O'Neill. Okay. When was Eugene O'Neill born? Eugene O'Neill was born in the year. That's correct. 1888. 1888 to when did he die? 1888 to 1953. 1888 to 1953. So this is the timeline of Eugene O'Neill. Okay. Now, let me ask you, Emperor John's and the Hairy Ape. Which came first? Emperor John's and the Hairy Ape. Which came first? Is it Emperor John's or the Hairy Ape? Yes, it was Emperor John's. Emperor John's was in the year? Emperor John's was in the year 1920. The Hairy Ape was in the year 1922. Okay, so Emperor John's came first in 1920. Hairy Ape came in the year 1922. Which other famous works was published in 1922? This is a very famous year. Which other works were published? Wasteland, Jacob's Room, Ulysses, The Hairy Ape. Then anything else? Siddhartha was also published in 1922. Okay. Muktadhara was also in 1922. Okay. Okay. So 1922 is an important year. Now, Aaron's Road, The Beautiful and the Damned. Okay. These are all works published in 1922. All God's Children Got Wings was written by All God's Children Got Wings. It was by Eugene O'Neill in the year 1924. Okay. He also published another work in 1924. Do you know the name of this work? Another work in 1924 by Eugene O'Neill. Yes, Desire Under the Elms. Desire Under the Elms. Okay. Strange Interlude was published in the year? Strange Interlude in the year 1928. Yes, 1928. So, Morning Becomes Electra. Morning Becomes Electra. 1931. Okay. The Iceman Comet. The Iceman Comet. These are all works by Eugene O'Neill. The Iceman Comet was written in the year 1939. Iceman Comet, 1939. Written in the year 1939. Long Day's Journey into Night was written in the year. Long Day's Journey into Night. Long Day's Journey into Night was written in 1941. 1941. Written in the year, not performed. I'm asking about the year in which it was written. In the year 1941. Okay. So let's just revise it once more. Emperor John's in the year. Emperor John's was published in the year 1920. Hairy Ape, 1922. Okay. Two works published in 1924. There are two works published in 1924. All God's Children Got Wings and Desire Under the Elms. Yes. Strange Interlude. Strange Interlude, 1928. What was published in 1931? 1931. Morning Becomes Electra. Yes. The Iceman Comet, written in the year Iceman Comet, 19. It was in 1939. 1939. Long Day's Journey into Night. Long Day's Journey into Night in 1941. Okay. So these are some of the important works of Eugene O'Neill. Okay. Now, who wrote the poem America? Who wrote the poem America? Who wrote America? Yes, it was Allen Ginsberg. America was written by Allen Ginsberg. Okay. Who wrote Dangling Man? Dangling Man? Saul Bellow. Yes, Saul Bellow. We discussed about some other work of Saul Bellow. Do you remember the name of that work? Herzog. Yes, Herzog. Okay. Now, another easy question. Who wrote A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court? Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court? Mark Twain. Yes, in the year? Mark Twain in the year? Just 1 year after Eugene O'Neill's birth. 1889. Yes. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court was published in 1889 by Mark Twain. Okay, now tell me, one of his novels is known as the greatest American novel. Which was that novel? The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is known as the greatest American novel. Okay. Now, who wrote London Trilogy? London Trilogy? The Wild Boys, Exterminator, Points of Saint, these are all works in London Trilogy. This was written by London Trilogy. It was by William S. Burroughs. William S. Burroughs. Okay. William S. Burroughs. Who wrote New York Trilogy? New York Trilogy. New York Trilogy is by Paul Auster. London Trilogy is by William S. Burroughs. Okay. Now, do you know the year in which The Old Man and the Sea was published? Old Man and the Sea? 1952. Yes, 1952. When was A Farewell to Arms published? A Farewell to Arms. 1929. 1929. The Sun Also Rises was published in the year 3 years before A Farewell to Arms. The Sun Also Rises was published in the year 1926. Not 1826, 1926. So, A Farewell to Arms and The Sun Also Rises. Which came first? A Farewell to Arms and The Sun Also Rises. Yes, The Sun Also Rises was in 1926. Farewell to Arms was in 1929. Oh. London Trilogy was by? London Trilogy was by William S. Burroughs. Okay. Who was the first American woman to win both a Pulitzer and a Nobel Prize? The first American woman to win both a Pulitzer and a Nobel Prize. Is it Toni Morrison? First American woman to win both Pulitzer and Nobel. It was Pearl S. Buck. Paul S. Buck. B-U-C-K, Buck. Paul S. Buck. Do you know any works written by Paul S. Buck? Any other works which she has written? Paul S. Buck. Any works? The Good Earth, A Divided House. These works are by Paul S. Buck. Okay. The Good Earth, A Divided House. These are all by Paul S. Buck. Okay, now tell me, there is this character Pearl in one of Nathaniel Hawthorne's works. Pearl is a character in Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter. Yes. Scarlet Letter was published in the year. Scarlet Letter was published in the year 1850. 1850. Yeah. Did anything else happen in 1850? 1850 is an important year. Who became the poet laureate of Britain in 1850? Poet laureate in 1850? It was Tennyson. Okay. There was also a work of Tennyson which was published in 1850. In Memoriam. In Memoriam by Tennyson was published in 1850. Yes. William Wordsworth died in 1850. Oh. Which work of Charles Dickens was published in 1850? David Copperfield was published in the year 1850. Okay. Which work of Nathaniel Hawthorne was published in 1850? Scarlet Letter. Yes. Scarlet Letter. Okay. The House of Seven Gables was published in House of Seven Gables 1851. Not 1951, it was 1851. Okay. Scarlet Letter 1850. House of Seven Gables 1851. Okay. Yeah. Now. Okay, there is this one short story of Nathaniel Hawthorne where there's a husband and a wife, and the wife has a birthmark on her cheek, and her husband is trying his maximum to get rid of this birthmark. Do you know which short story am I talking about? Yes. Obviously, it is The Birthmark. The Birthmark by Nathaniel Hawthorne, published in the year. Can you tell me the year? Birthmark was published in the year 1843. Yes, 1843. Okay. Can you tell me the work in which Nathaniel Hawthorne uses first-person narrative? Nathaniel Hawthorne uses first-person narrative in one of his works. Which was this work? The first-person narrative of Nathaniel Hawthorne. You know this one. The name is very familiar. We all know this. It is Blithedale Romance. Blithedale Romance. Nathaniel Hawthorne uses first-person narrative in Blithedale Romance. Okay. The Prelude was also in 1850. Okay. So, the work in which Nathaniel Hawthorne uses first-person narrative is Blithedale Romance. Okay. Who wrote The Emperor of Ice Cream? The Emperor of Ice Cream? Emperor of Ice Cream? Wallace Stevens. Yes, Wallace Stevens. Who wrote The Iceman Cometh? The Iceman Cometh? Eugene O'Neill. Okay. Now, when was A Streetcar Named Desire published? A Streetcar Named Desire. 1947. 1947. Yes. Okay. What is the name of the character in A Streetcar Named Desire? We talked about her in the beginning. Yes, it is Blanche. Blanche is from A Streetcar Named Desire. Okay. Can you tell me in which year was A Glass Menagerie published? The Glass Menagerie, 1944. Yes, 1944. That's correct. Okay. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was published in 1955. True or false? Is it true or false? Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was published in 1955. Yes, it was true. Was published in 1955. Oh. Who wrote A Song of Myself? Song of Myself? Walt Whitman. Yes. Song of Myself, Walt Whitman. Who wrote The Art of Fiction? The Art of Fiction? Henry James. Do you know the year in which it was published? The Art of Fiction? Yes, very good. It was in 1884. 1884. Okay. Art of Fiction by Henry James. Who wrote The Craft of Fiction? The Craft of Fiction? Percy Lubbock. Yes. The Craft of Fiction by Percy Lubbock. Okay. Yeah. When was Nathaniel Hawthorne born? Nathaniel Hawthorne born. When was Nathaniel Hawthorne born? 1804. Yes. 1804. Okay. Is Nathaniel Hawthorne elder to Eugene O'Neill? Is Nathaniel Hawthorne elder to Eugene O'Neill? Yes. When was Eugene O'Neill born? 1888. Nathaniel Hawthorne was born in the year 1804. Okay. Yes. When was the Hairy Ape published? Hairy Ape, 1922. Emperor John's? Emperor John's, 1920. Are you able to remember these years? Is it helping you? Okay. Okay, tell me. The Wild Boys, Exterminator, Points of Saint. These are all works in which trilogy? It is by William S. Burroughs. Yes, it is the London trilogy. It is the London trilogy. Okay. Who was born in the year 1809? 1809. He died in 1849. Yes, it was Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. Tell me, the fall of the House of Usher and the murders in the Rue Morgue, which came first? The fall of the House of Usher or the murders in the Rue Morgue? When was the fall of the House of Usher published? The fall of the House of Usher, it was in 1839. Okay. When was the murders in the Rue Morgue published? Murders in the Rue Morgue, published in 1841. It was in 1841. Murders in the Rue Morgue. So, the fall of the House of Usher came first, 1839, followed by the murders in the Rue Morgue in 1841. Okay. Yeah. When was Pit and the Pendulum published? Pit and the Pendulum. Pit and the Pendulum. Just 1 year after the murders in the Rue Morgue. Yes, 1842. Okay. Who wrote Pit and the Pendulum? Who wrote Pit and the Pendulum? Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. Do you remember the repeating line in Raven? There's this repeating phrase in Raven. Yes, nevermore. Nevermore is a repeating line in Raven. Okay. Who wrote To Helen? Who wrote To Helen? Yes, To Helen by Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. Who wrote the Cask of Amontillado? Cask of Amontillado? Edgar Allan Poe. In the year 18 Cask of Amontillado in the year 1846. Yes, 1846. Okay. 1846. When was Glass Menagerie published? 1844. 1844. Okay. Can you name some of the transcendental writers? Who all are the transcendental writers that we know? Emerson, Thoreau, people other than Emerson and Thoreau. Margaret Fuller, Walt Whitman. Yes. These are all transcendental writers. Okay. Now, whose pen name is Samuel Langhorne Clemens? Whose pen name is Samuel Langhorne Clemens? Mark Twain. Mark Twain. Yes. Mark. Yes. Yeah. Mark Twain is the pen name of Samuel Langhorne Clemens. Yeah. Okay. O. Henry is the pen name of O. Henry. O. Henry is the pen name of William Sidney Potter. Yes, William Sidney Potter. Okay. Call Me Ishmael is the opening line of which work? Call Me Ishmael. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Yes, Herman Melville. Okay. Now, who wrote Incidents in the incidents in the slave girl, incidents in the life of a slave girl? Harriet Jacobs. Yes, it was by Harriet Jacobs. Okay. Do you know who is known as the Nun of Amherst? Nun of Amherst. Who is the Nun of Amherst? Emily Dickinson. Okay. A random question. Who wrote Letter to Amherst? Letter to Amherst. Yes, very good. It was by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Yes, okay. Who wrote the Rabbit series? The Rabbit series. It was by Rabbit series was by John Updike. John Updike. Oh. So, when was a Scarlet Letter published? 1850. Okay. Which was the work published in 1851? 1851. The House of Seven Gables. The House of Seven Gables. Okay. The Art of Fiction was by? The Art of Fiction was by Henry James. Craft of Fiction by? Craft of Fiction, Percy Lubbock. Okay. So, last question from American. Who wrote The House of Mirth? Mirth. House of Mirth. Who wrote House of Mirth? Yes, it is Edith Wharton. Edith Wharton. Edith Wharton wrote House of Mirth. Okay. So, was the session beneficial? Were you able to recall what you learned? So let's meet in the next session. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very informative session, Aksa, and I really enjoyed your class. Good evening, Aishwarya. Good evening, Pugaranti, Anuradha, Meetu, Deena, Shreya, Chandana. Thank you, Varalika. Hello, Vasila, Nidhi, Kalpana. Thank you, Anuradha. Good evening, Gitanjali, Monidipa, Anagha, Ji, Anushka. Thank you, Monidipa. Good evening, Ausalya. Okay. I knew you wanted break. That's why too many compliments. And good evening, Tanuja, Kausalya, Shishanto, Kaiser, Aksa, Meetu, Monica, Tamrai, Jovita, another Aksa there. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Okay, we'll learn some European literature now. Good evening, Sudeepa. Yes, Nidhi, I will speak. Good evening to the YouTubers also. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Monica. Okay, let's get started with some European now. Good evening, Sinju. See, now instead of telling break, you guys have started conversing. But yeah, YouTubers are also there. We are doing a marathon now. Okay, I'll start with some easy questions. That will be like your break. Easy questions you can answer anytime, right? Good evening, Anima. Okay, the first question. Very easy. Who wrote the Divine Comedy? Who wrote the Divine Comedy? Dante. Now the Decameron. The Decameron. Decameron is by Boccaccio. Now who wrote Canzoniere? Canzoniere. Petrarch. Francesco Petrarch. Now who wrote In Praise of Folly? Who wrote In Praise of Folly? Desiderius Erasmus. Erasmus. Now, who wrote The Prince? Who wrote The Prince? We have a typical character from the person's name who wrote The Prince because of writing The Prince. Machiavelli, yes, Niccolo Machiavelli. Yes, very good. Now, who wrote Gargantua and Pantagruel? Gargantua and Pantagruel, who wrote it? Gargantua and Pantagruel is by? I still did not get the correct answer. Gargantua and Pantagruel is by? Rabelais. Francois Rabelais. And who wrote Don Quixote? Who wrote Don Quixote? Cervantes. Cervantes. Miguel de Cervantes. Did you notice something? I always ask the date of publication along with the work, but this time I'm not asking. Why? Because in European, they usually don't ask chronology based question because these were not written in English. So there is this translations which we read. So there is this disparity between the year of publication of the original in the mother tongues like French or German or any European language and in English. So that's why usually they don't ask chronology-based questions for European. If you know it, it's well and good. What if they ask? And European is kind of ignored also in net, but you never know. This year might be different. So these are like the famous works which you have to know. Divine Comedy or Decameron, Canzonier, In Praise of Folly, Prince, Don Quixote. Then these things are like major texts about European literature which you have to know. So the characters also you have to know and who wrote it. With time, I'll come to the character questions also, don't worry. So these are something which you have to know about European literature. These are like basics of European literature. And I'm so glad that all of you have answered them correctly. Only with Rabelais, you were a bit reluctant to answer that maybe. But yeah, these are some things that you have to know about European literature. Now, do you know the real name of Molière? Moliere's real name? Real name of Molière? Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. And did he write The Misanthrope? Did he write The Misanthrope? Yes, he did. He did. Who wrote Lecide? Who wrote Lecide? Lecide. Lecid. Lecide is by Pierre Corneille. Is by Pierre Corneille. Now, what is the pseudonym of Francois Marie Arouet? What is the pseudonym? And we know him as that particular name. Francois Marie Arouet is whose name? Voltaire. Yes. Francois Marie Arouet is Voltaire's name. Did he write Candide? Did he write Candide? Yes, he did. And who wrote Candida? Who wrote Candida? Shaw. G.B. Shaw wrote Candida, whereas Candide is by Voltaire. Don't get confused between the two. What you have both of them in the options and you have to choose one. Okay, now The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Young Werther is by whom? Who wrote the Sorrows of Young Werther? Goethe. Yes, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe is the one who wrote The Sorrows of Young Werther. Who wrote The Social Contract? Who wrote The Social Contract? Rousseau. Correct. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is the one who wrote The Social Contract. And who wrote The Birth of Tragedy? Who wrote The Birth of Tragedy? Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche. Very good. Now I'll give you some characters. You have to tell me these are famous characters of which important work in European literature, of course. Porphyry, Porphyry, Porphyry. Porphyry, do you remember? Is a character from Crime and Punishment. Porphyry is a character from Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment. Who wrote Crime and Punishment? Dostoevsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, do you know Leorox is a character in which work? Leorox, Leureux. I think it's pronounced as Leuro, but yes, for your convenience, I'm pronouncing it as Leorox. Leureux is a character in which work? Madame Bovary. Madame Bovary. Who wrote Madame Bovary? Who wrote Madame Bovary? Flaubert, Gustave Flaubert. Gustave Flaubert wrote Madame Bovary, and Luyos is a character there. Now, this one you should know. Vronsky is a character in. Vronsky is a character in. Finally, Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina. Who wrote Anna Karenina? Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy. Now, Havert or Javert. It's written as Javert, but pronunciation is Havert. It's European. So pronunciation is a bit different than what it is written. So Havert or Javert is a character in. Havert or Javert is a character in. Okay, the same. Jean Valjean or Jean Valjean. Yes. La Miserables. Les Miserables or La Miserable. La Miserable has this character, Javert or Havert also. So yeah, as I told you, directly you can say who wrote what. So character questions also might be asked. So be prepared for that also. Okay. Did Italo Calvino wrote the joke? Write the joke? Did Italo Calvino write the joke? The joke? False. He did not write the joke. Who wrote the mother? Who wrote the mother? Who wrote the mother? Maxim Gorky. Yes, Maxim Gorky. Yes, the joke is by Milan Kundera, not by Italo Calvino. Very good. Maxim Gorky wrote the mother. Did Camus write the trial? Albert Camus, did he write the trial? No. Franz Kafka wrote the trial. The trial is by Franz Kafka. Albert Camus, yes, Camus wrote The Outsider. Then he wrote The Fall. But the trial is by Franz Kafka. Now, who wrote The Chairs? Who wrote The Chairs? The Chairs is by Eugene Ionesco. The Chairs is by Eugene Ionesco. Okay, is by Eugene Ionesco. Lolita. Lolita is a famous work by Vladimir Nabokov. Vladimir Nabokov. Now, who wrote 6 characters in search of an author? 6 characters in search of an author? Pirandello. Yes, Pirandello. Italo Calvino, Pirandello, these are like could be favorites of NTA. Okay. Not many authors are asked, but whoever I'm asking from based on BYQ, who are generally asked. Now, who wrote the Count of Monte Cristo? Who wrote the Count of Monte Cristo? Alexander Dumas. Yes, Alexander Dumas or Duma. Actual pronunciation is Duma. Okay. And who wrote If on a Winter's Night a Traveler? If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. That is by Italo Calvino. Yes, that is by Italo Calvino. If on a Winter's Night a Traveler is by Italo Calvino. Did Nikolai Gogol write Dead Souls? Did Nikolai Gogol write Dead Souls? Is Dead Souls written by Nikolai Gogol? Yes, it is true. Nikolai Gogol wrote Dead Souls. Now, which language became the lingua franca throughout Europe in the Middle Ages? Which language became the lingua franca franca throughout Europe in the Middle Ages. Lingua franca is the link language. Lingua franca means link language. Which language became the lingua franca? It is Latin. Latin became the lingua franca throughout Europe in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, it was Latin. Okay, don't get confused. In the Middle Ages, Latin was the lingua franca. And do you know what are the Romance languages? What are the Romance languages? What is the term Romance language meant by? These are languages evolved from Latin. Languages evolved from Latin. So it's Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Romanian. These are Romance language, whereas neither Greek nor English are. Okay, so Greek and English, these are not Romance language, but Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Romanian, these are Romance language. So link language and Romance language. These are two types of language specific to European literature. Do look them up. Okay. Now, name the verse form used in composing the Divine Comedy. So the Divine Comedy used which verse form? Terza rima. Very good. Yes. Divine Comedy was written in terza rima. And can you tell me the dialect? Can you tell me the dialect? Tuscan. Yes. Written in Tuscan dialect. Italian epic poem written in Tuscan dialect. In which year is the Decameron set in? The Decameron is set in which year? This type of chronology may come because there is no disparity in, the year of publication in the original and the English. The Decameron is set in the year 1348. 1348. Okay. The Decameron is set in the year 1348. Now name the love poem by Petrarch, which means Book of Songs. The love poem by Petrarch, that means Book of Songs. Hint, I have asked it already. Yes, it is Canzonier. Canzonier is the love poem by Petrarch, which means Book of Songs. Now, this also I have asked already. Which book was banned by the Catholic Church, written by Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli? Which work was banned by the Catholic Church, written by Niccolo Machiavelli? The Prince. Yes, The Prince was banned by the Catholic Church. Now, in Praise of Folly, which is a humanist satire, it parades the protagonist folly as what? The Praise of Folly parades the protagonist folly as what? Do you want options? Okay, I'll give you options. Muse, queen, prophetess, goddess. A muse, a queen, a prophetess, a goddess. A goddess. Very good. Yes. So in Praise of Folly, Folly is paraded as a goddess. Now, another character question. Mercedes is the heroine of which novel? Mercedes. Mercedes is the heroine of which work? That also I have discussed. I have asked you who wrote it. Count of Monte Cristo. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Yes. Aishwarya, you want me to repeat the folly question? Okay. The question was, in the Praise of Folly, which is a humanist satire, it parades the protagonist Folly as a goddess. A goddess is the answer. Then I asked Mercedes about Mercedes, who is the heroine of Count of Monte Cristo. Now, in Madame Bovary, how does Emma die? In Flaubert's Madame Bovary, how does Emma die? By consuming arsenic. Yes, she commits suicide by consuming arsenic. Now, who has written this short story in which there is this character called Mathilde who borrows a diamond necklace from Madame Forestier and then loses it and then works all her life to replace it and then finds out that it was not even real? Yes, necklace. Who wrote it? The necklace? Guy de Maupassant. Guy de Maupassant or Guy de Maupassant. Guy de Maupassant wrote the necklace. Now, who wrote La Fleurs du Mal or The Flower of Folly? The Flower of Folly is written by whom? The Flower of Folly. Sorry, The Flower of Evil. La Fleur du Mal or The Flower of Evil. The Flower of Evil is written by Charles Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire wrote The Flower of Evil. Now, can you name the prison in which Jean Valjean was imprisoned in La Miserable? The name of the prison where Jean Valjean was imprisoned in La Miserable or Les Miserables? Bane of Toulon. Bane of Toulon. Bane of Toulon. Bane of Toulon. Bane, Bane of Toulon. Toulon. Okay. Now, so the play Mother Courage and Her Children, that begins in this place called Dash. And the setting is the midst of the 30 Years' War in 1624. Can you tell me the place where it begins? Setting I'm giving you, it is in the midst of 30 Years' War in 1624. So it begins in which place? Dalarna is the specific place. In this place called Dalarna. 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 It begins in Dalarna. Dalarna. In the midst of the 30 Years' War. That is also important. It is set in the midst of the 30 Years' War in 1624. In 1624. Now, what is the first novel by Vladimir Nabokov? Can you name the first novel by Vladimir Nabokov? And it's not Lolita. It's not Lolita. It's Mary or Mashenka. It is called Mary or Mashenka. Mashenka was the original. In English, we call it Mary. Mary or Mashenka. Can you tell me who wrote the Roads to Freedom trilogy? The Roads to Freedom trilogy is written by whom? The Roads to Freedom trilogy. Yes, it is by Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote the Roads to Freedom trilogy. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote the Roads to Freedom trilogy. Now, which novel is written in verse that has 389 stanzas of iambic tetrameter? Which is a novel written in verse that has 389 stanzas of iambic tetrameter with an unusual rhyme scheme? Eugene Onegin, yes. Eugene Onegin, very good. By Pushkin, very good. Eugene Onegin by Pushkin. Now, the characters Lisa, then Zverkov are characters in which novel? There is this prostitute called Lisa, then the protagonist and the schoolmate of this protagonist called Zverkov. These are characters in which novel? The characters of Lisa, who is a prostitute, and then there is the schoolmate which the protagonist meets called Zverkov. These are characters from Lisa the prostitute or Zverkov. These are characters from Notes from the Underground. Notes from the Underground. Do you remember who wrote Notes from the Underground? Who wrote Notes from the Underground? Dostoevsky. Yes. Someone said Crime and Punishment, so close enough, but not correct. These are from Notes from the Underground. Okay. Next question. An old man and an old woman are characters in. An old man and an old woman are characters in The Chairs. These are characters in The Chairs. Now, of verses of Virgil and of age are works by. Of verses of Virgil and of age are works by Montaigne. These are works by Montaigne. 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 Now, who is the fourth musketeer in Alexander Dumas' Three Musketeers? Who is considered as the fourth musketeer in Alexander Dumas' Three Musketeers? D'Artagnan. Yes, D'Artagnan. D'Artagnan is considered as the fourth musketeer. Correct. Now, Alceste and Celimene are lovers in which play? Alceste and Celimene are lovers in which play? Alceste and Celimene are lovers in The Misanthrope. In The Misanthrope. Who wrote The Misanthrope? Who wrote The Misanthrope? Molière. Yes, correct. Molière. Now, who wrote The Cherry Orchard? Who wrote The Cherry Orchard? Anton Chekhov. Yes, Anton Chekhov wrote The Cherry Orchard. Can you name the book by Gogol, which is mentioned in Jhumpa Lahiri's namesake? Gogol's work that is mentioned, not just mentioned, it is an important part of Jhumpa Lahiri's namesake. And why Gogol was named Gogol. The Overcoat, finally, yes. The Overcoat is mentioned in Jhumpa Lahiri's namesake also. Yes. Now, can you tell me who wrote Ghosts? Who wrote Ghosts? Ibsen. Henrik Ibsen. Yes, it is by Henrik Ibsen. Is decline of aristocracy a theme of The Cherry Orchard? Is decline of aristocracy a theme of The Cherry Orchard? Yes, it is. Yes. Along with rise of the middle class. Along with rise of the middle class. Rise of the middle class is also a theme of The Cherry Orchard. Now, who wrote The Piano Teacher? Who wrote The Piano Teacher? The Piano Teacher. It's a prescribed text, so you have to know, okay? So, I mean, it's good to know. It is Alfred Jelinek. Jelinek, or this spelling is Jelinek. Alfred Jelinek or Jelinek. Alfred Jelinek. Did Hermann Hesse write Siddhartha? Did Hermann Hesse write Siddhartha? Yes, correct. Siddhartha is by Hermann Hesse. Did Camus write The Plague? Did Camus write The Plague? The Plague is by Camus. Yes, true. Who wrote The Thief's Journal? Who wrote The Thief's Journal? The Thief's Journal. Jean Genet. Yes, it is by Jean Genet. The Thief's Journal is by Jean Genet. Now, the Remembrance of Things Past is by whom? Remembrance of Things Past is by whom? Marcel Proust. Yes, it is by Marcel Proust. Good. Who wrote Nana? Who wrote Nana? Nana. Nana. Emile Zola. Yes, Nana is by Emile Zola. Who wrote the Tin Drum? Who wrote the Tin Drum? Gunter Grass. The Tin Drum is by Gunter Grass. The Tin Drum is by Gunter Grass. Who wrote The World as Will and Representation? The World as Will and Representation is by whom? The World as Will and Representation is by whom? Arthur Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote The World as Will, and Representation. Arthur Schopenhauer. Who wrote Les Miserables? I have asked so many questions about Les Miserables. I did not ask the author only. Who wrote Les Miserables? Victor Hugo. Yes, it is by Victor Hugo. Did Rousseau write The Birth of Tragedy? Did Rousseau write The Birth of Tragedy? No, it was by Nietzsche. It was by Nietzsche. Who wrote The Trial? Who wrote The Trial? Franz Kafka. The Trial is by Franz Kafka. Who wrote The Rebel? Who wrote The Rebel? Albert Camus. Albert Camus. Who wrote The Myth of Sisyphus? Who wrote The Myth of Sisyphus? That is also Camus. So The Fall, The Stranger, Rebel, The Trial, Myth of Sisyphus, these are all works by Albert Camus. All works by Albert Camus. Who wrote The Bold Soprano? Who wrote the Bold Soprano? Who wrote The Bold Soprano? Yes, it is by Ionesco, Eugene Ionesco. Who wrote The Human, All Too Human? The Human, All Too Human. Who wrote The Human, All Too Human? Major work by Nietzsche. It's a major work by Nietzsche. The Human, All Too Human. So Birth of Tragedy, The Human, All Too Human. Then Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Thus Spoke Zarathustra. That is also Zarathustra. That is also by Nietzsche. Then Beyond Good and Evil. Beyond Good and Evil. That is also by Nietzsche. Who wrote Communist Manifesto? Who wrote Communist Manifesto? Karl Marx. Yes. Communist Manifesto is by Karl Marx. Can you tell me who wrote Mademoiselle de Maupin? Mademoiselle de Maupin. Mademoiselle de Maupin, which is a novel. Théophile Gautier. Yes, it is by Théophile Gautier. Correct. Who wrote The Ball? Who wrote The Ball? Who wrote The Ball? Nobody wrote The Ball. Sorry, I read The Fall as The Ball. Sorry, there is no word called The Ball. Just a trick. Who wrote The Fall? Albert Camus. Yes, Albert Camus. Emma is the protagonist of which work by Flaubert? Emma is the protagonist of which work by Flaubert? Madame Bovary. Madame Bovary. Is Madame Bovary a social satire on middle class morality? Is Madame Bovary a social satire on middle class morality? Yes, it is. Yes, it is a social satire on middle class morality. Who wrote The Red and the Black? Who wrote The Red and the Black? Who wrote The Red and the Black? It is by Stendhal. It is by Stendhal. It is by Stendhal. Stendhal wrote The Red and the Black. Can you tell me Stendhal is one of the pseudonyms of whom? What is the real name of Stendhal? What is the real name of Stendhal? Mary Henry Bale. Mary Henry Bale. Mary Henry Bale. And Stendhal is one of his many pseudonyms. He has many pseudonyms, and Stendhal is one of his many pseudonyms. Who wrote Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship? Who wrote Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship? Goethe. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe is the one who wrote Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship. Now, which work by Voltaire can be translated into English as all for the best or optimism or the optimist? Which work by Voltaire can be translated into English as all for the best, the optimist or optimism? Candide. Yes, it is Candide. Who wrote Phaedre? Who wrote Phaedre? Phedre. Who wrote Phaedre? Is by Jean Racine. It is by Racine. Jean Racine. Who wrote The Miser? Who wrote The Miser? Whose major play is The Miser? The Miser is a major play of Molière. The same person who wrote The Misanthrope. And he has also written The Imaginary Invalid. Then Tartuffe or The Hypocrite. These are all works by Molière. These are all works by Molière. Now, who wrote Age of Sensibility? Nobody wrote it. It's a time. It's the time. Can you tell me the year of Age of Sensibility? It was around which time? It's the 1750s to 1770s. 1750s to 1770s. And during this time, during the age of 70s, Goethe's a very important work came in. What was that? Which is based on the Age of Sensibility. Goethe's a very important work came in. Which was that? The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Young Werther. Now, can you tell me the year of Sturm und Drang, which is storm and stress? Sturm und Drang. Storm and Undrang, which is storm and stress. That was during the 70s to 80s. During the 70s to 80s. Then came Weimar classism. Weimar classism, what was the time period of Weimar classism? Weimar classism was 1788 to 1832. These are all centuries in which literature? Age of Sensibility, Sturm und Drang, Weimar classism, these are all part of, 18th century of which literature? German literature. These are part of, age group of German literature. Can you tell me who wrote Emily? Who wrote Emile, which ends with E? Emile. Rousseau. Emile or Emily is by Rousseau. Is Julie also by Rousseau? Is Julie also by Rousseau? What is the other name of Julie? Yes, Julie is also by Rousseau. What is the other name of Julie? Julie, or it is also known as another, this novel is also known by another name, which is that? The New Heloise. Yes, the New Heloise or New Heloise. Yes. The New Heloise. Correct. Now, 50 short stories is written by Anton Chekhov. He not only wrote plays, he has also written short stories. Do you think humor was the main feature of Chekhov's short stories? Humor was the main feature of Chekhov's short stories? Yes, it was. Humor was one of the main feature of Chekhov's short stories. Did he write The Bet? Did he write The Bet? Did he write The Black Monk? Did he write The Black Monk? Now, who wrote The Death of a Government Clerk? Who wrote The Death of a Government Clerk? The Death of a Government Clerk is by whom? Anton Chekhov. It is by Anton Chekhov. Who wrote The Death of Ivan Ilyich? Who wrote The Death of Ivan Ilyich? Who wrote The Death of Ivan Ilyich? It is by Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy. Who wrote War and Peace? Who wrote War and Peace? Tolstoy again. Can you name any one of Tolstoy's autobiography? Can you name any one of Tolstoy's autobiography? Childhood, boyhood, youth. Childhood, boyhood, youth. These are all autobiographies by Leo Tolstoy. These are all autobiographies of Leo Tolstoy. Madame Odintsova is a character in Madame Odintsova is a character in Madame Odintsova is a character in Fathers and Sons. Who wrote Fathers and Sons? Is a character in Father and Sons. Who wrote Fathers and Sons? Who wrote Father and Sons? Ivan Turgenev. Ivan Turgenev wrote Fathers and Sons. Can you tell me? It is also a title of a short story by whom? Fathers and Sons is also a title of a short story. Who wrote that short story? Hemingway. Yes. Fathers and Sons. That has the character of Madame Odetsova. It's 9. Is Ankita here? Okay, goodbye everyone. From tomorrow onwards, we will have paper one marathon. But today, let us move on to the last session of paper 2. Bye, good night.
Hello everyone, hi. All right. Good evening. So now we will revise literary theory, criticism and cultural studies. All right. Let's get started. Good evening, good evening. Okay, let me know if you guys can see the screen. Yes, so I hope it's visible to you all. I welcome you all again to this last chunk. So I have many questions tonight for you all. So let's get started. Choose the wrong statement. S bar Z, published in 1970, is Roland Barthes' structural analysis of Sarracine, the short story by Henri de Balzac. Antonio Negri was an Italian political philosopher known as one of the most prominent theorists of autonomism, as well as for his co-authorship of Empire with Michael Hart. The Frankfurt School of Critical Theory was a group of scholars and philosophers who developed a critical theory of society that analyzed the impact of capitalism, technology, and monopolies on people and communities. Eclipse of Reason is a 1947 book by Theodor Adorno. Tell me, which one is wrong? Okay, let's see what you all are saying. Correct. Last option is wrong because Eclipse of Reason is a 1947 book, not by Theodor Adorno, but by Max Horkheimer. Last option is wrong. Eclipse of Reason is not by Adorno, but by Horkheimer. And both of them belong to the Frankfurt School of Theory. Okay, got it? Right. Now, let me ask you a bit more about the years because we are just at the verge of giving our exams. So let's revise the years. All right. Okay. So here I have told you S bar Z was published in 1970. That's correct, right? S bar Z was published in 1970. Tell me, the Pleasure of the Text was published in which year? The Pleasure of the Text was published in which year? It was published in 1973. 1973. And please do look at all the statements here once again. S bar Z, 1970, Roland Barthes, Structural Analysis of Sarracine, short story by Balzac. Antonio Negri, political philosopher from Italy, most famous for autonomism, author of Empire along with Michael Hart. Here, just a brief line about Frankfurt School of Theory and Eclipse of Reason, 1947, Horkheimer. Got it all? Right. Let's move on to the next question. Arrange the following works in the correct chronological order. Speculum of the Other Woman. Do tell me the authors as well when you tell the years. Speculum of the Other Woman, The Wretched of the Earth, Gender Trouble, Difference and Repetition. Who wrote Speculum of the Other Women? Who wrote Speculum of the Other Woman? It's by Lucy Irigaray, right? The Wretched of the Earth is by Frantz Fanon. Gender Trouble, obviously, Judith Butler. And who wrote Difference and Repetition? It's by that famous duo. Yeah. Correct. Difference and Repetition. Now tell me the years also. Yes, Difference and Repetition is by Deleuze. Remember the famous duo of Deleuze and Guattari? Difference and Repetition is by Deleuze. Now, let's arrange the works. We know The Wretched of the Earth, 1961. Gender Trouble, 1990. So, also tell me these 2 years. Yes. The Wretched of the Earth, 1961 by Frantz Fanon. Difference and Repetition by Gilles Deleuze, 1968. Speculum of the Other Woman by Lucy Irigaray, 1974. And lastly, Butler's Gender Trouble, 1990. So, Wretched of the Earth, Difference and Repetition, Speculum of the Other Woman, and Gender Trouble. Clear? Are you all following? Right. Next question. Arrange the following theorists according to their years of birth. Freud, Sedgwick, Althusser, Iser. Let's give you all a minute and arrange the theorists according to the years of birth. Freud, Sedgwick, Althusser, and Wolfgang Iser. First, we know there will be Sigmund Freud because he was born in 1856. That much we all know, right? He will come first among all of these theorists. So let's have a look now at the answer. Sigmund Freud, 1856. Louis Althusser, 1918. Wolfgang Iser was born in 1926. And lastly, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick was born in 1950. Remember, yesterday we talked about Epistemology of the Closet by Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick. So Freud, then Althusser, then Wolfgang Iser, and then lastly Sedgwick. Got it all? Are you all getting the questions of chronology correct? Yes? Okay. Next. Again, statement-based question. Choose the correct statements. Orientalism is a 1975 book by Edward Said, in which he establishes the term Orientalism as a critical concept to describe the Western world's commonly contemptuous depiction and portrayal of the Eastern world. The term Orientalism denotes the exaggeration of difference, the presumption of Western superiority, and the application of cliché analytical models for perceiving the Oriental world. Is that the correct definition of Orientalism? Then lastly, Ernest Gellner's The Mightier Pen, Edward Said and the Double Standards of Inside-Out Colonialism is a review of Culture and Imperialism by Edward Said. Choose the correct statements. Because one statement here is wrong. You can all take some time also, some few more seconds. Yes. So here the correct statements are B and C. Because 1975 was not the year of publication of Orientalism. What was the publication year of Orientalism? Tell me, and let me ask you about more publication years. Yeah. Orientalism 1978. Orientalism 1978. Yesterday we talked about culture and imperialism. Tell me which is the memoir of Edward Said. Which is the memoir of Edward Said? His famous memoir? Which one? Out of Place, a memoir. Out of Place, a memoir. Next. She influenced feminist literary criticism in the United States academia, developing the concept and practice of gynocritiques, a term describing the study of women as writers. So who is this theorist? Very important theorist. You all know about her works. Yes, it is Elaine Showalter. Elaine Showalter. Tell me, Elaine Showalter's A Literature of Their Own was published in? A Literature of Their Own was published in 1977. 1977. And The Female Malady was published in? And The Female Malady was published in? Which year? 1985. 1985. Okay. Toward a Black Feminist Criticism is a work by? Toward a Black Feminist Criticism is a work by? Who wrote this work? Yes. It's by Barbara Smith. It's by Barbara Smith. Got it? Do look up these theorists once again. Before your exam, you guys still have time. The exam is on 7th. So you have some time still. And do look up these theorists once again. The spectre is a concept given renewed currency by Dash, who used it to characterize the ways in which intellectual, historical, and political legacies come to haunt contemporary thinking. Was it Derrida, Paul de Man, Harold Bloom, or Louis Althusser who talked about the concept of the spectre? It was obviously Derrida in Spectres of Marx who talked about the concept of the spectre. Spectre means ghost, right? Spectre means ghost. So Derrida in Spectres of Marx talked about this idea of the concept. What concept? The concept of the spectre. That is how the political legacies like ghosts keep on haunting our contemporary thinking. How the past haunts the present like a ghost. Right? Yes. Next, a very easy statement-based true or false question. One of Spivak's most well-known essays. And please try to read the statements before you answer, because the statements have lots of information. So please don't just write true, please read the statement before that. One of Spivak's most well-known essays is Can the Subaltern Speak? An essay which offers a deconstructive reading of the term representation in Marx's 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, and applies this reading to Hindu scriptures and colonial archives on the practice of sati suicide in colonial India. So this sentence actually gives you a gist of the essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? So is it true or is it false? It is true. Very true. Spivak's most important work that has been widely read across the globe, that is Can the Subaltern Speak? It's an essay which offers a deconstructive reading of the term representation as she saw it in Marx's 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. And she applies that idea to the reading of the Hindu scriptures and colonial archives on the practice of sati, which was very widely prevalent in colonial India, right? So how representation works in terms of the Hindu scriptures and very wild and heinous practices like sati, where women were burnt alive on the same pyres along with their husbands, right? It was a horrible, terrible practice that was widely prevalent in colonial India. Okay. Next, Kathy Karuth, 1955, please remember the year, is a leading theorist in Dash, museum studies, Renaissance studies, trauma studies, or film studies. Yes. Kathy Karuth is from trauma studies. Kathy Karuth is a leading theorist in trauma studies. Got it? Okay. Okay, next. Paul Virilio. He was a theorist, urbanist, architect, and aesthetic philosopher. He is best known for his writings about technology. Remember Paul Virilio and technology, as it has developed in relation to speed and power, with diverse references to architecture, the arts, the city, and the military. Please keep these key words in your mind, okay? Virilio was a prolific creator of neologisms, most notably his concept of dromology, the all-around pervasive inscription of speed in every aspect of life. So now tell me, true or false? True. Very true. Are you all following? Do you think these questions will be helpful for you all? Yes? Okay. Right. So please remember Paul Virilio, dromology, speed, technology, city, military, architecture, all this, okay? And speed and power, very important. Foucault talked about knowledge and power. And Paul Virilio talked about speed and power, right? Next, meta-history, the historical imagination in 19th century Europe, is a work of historiography by Dash, first published in 1973. Who wrote this work, Meta-History? Linda Hutcheon, Hayden White, Pierre Bourdieu, Claude Lévi-Strauss. Who wrote this Meta-History? It's by Hayden White. It's by Hayden White. Hayden White wrote Meta-History, the historical imagination in 19th century Europe. Do look up the meaning of the term meta-history. All right, if you don't know it yet. Next. Who among the following was not a part of the Yale School? Harold Bloom, Paul the Man, Geoffrey Hartman, Lionel Trilling. Who was not a part of the Yale School of Criticism? Right. Lionel Trilling was not a part of the Yale School of Criticism. Lionel Trilling was not a part of this school of criticism. Clear? Right. Of Grammatology is a Dash book by Derrida. 1965, 67, 69, or 71? Very easy, tell me. Yes. 1967. of Grammatology was published in 1967 and it was translated into English by Spivak. By Spivak. Correct. Next. Who were the members of the Subaltern Studies Collective? Remember Subaltern Studies Collective of South Asia? Who were the members of this collective? Yes. Right. All of you are answering correctly the names. Yes. Ronojit Guha, Partha Chatterjee, Dipesh Chakraborty, Gayatri Spivak, Gyanendra Pandey, Shahid Amin. Ranajit Guha, Partha Chatterjee, Dipesh Chakraborty, Gayatri Spivak, Gyanendra Pandey, Shahid Amin. They were the members of the Subaltern Studies Collective. All right. Structural Semantics, an attempt at a method, is a work by Dash. Is it by Gerard Genet, A.J. Greimas, or Roland Barthes? Structural Semantics. Structural Semantics is by A.J. Greimas. A.J. Greimas. Very good. Okay. Next. The concept implied author was introduced into literary criticism by Dash in Dash, which emerged from the neo-Aristotelian school of formalism associated with the work of R.S. Crane. So who, in which work, talked about the concept of the implied author? Wayne Booth in the Rhetoric of Fiction, Percy Luberg in The Craft of Fiction, Henry James in The Art of Fiction, or D.H. Lawrence in Why Novel Matters? Yes. Wayne Booth in The Rhetoric of Fiction talked about the concept of the implied author. Wayne Booth in The Rhetoric of Fiction talked about the concept of the implied author. Okay. Structuralist poetics. Structuralism, linguistics, and the study of literature is a dash book of critical literary theory by the critic Jonathan Culler. So in which year was this book published? 1970, 1975, 1977, or 1979? In which year was this book published? Let's see. It is indeed 1975. So Jonathan Culler's Structuralist Poetics was published in 1975. Okay, please try to remember the years as much as you can. Okay. Who among the following was known as a fair-minded critique of critiques? Was it René Welleck, Roman Ingarden, Umberto Eco, or Wolfgang Iser, who is known as a fair-minded critique of critiques? Let's see what you all are saying. It is René Welleck. René Welleck was known as a fair-minded critique of critiques. Okay. Next. The Principles of Psychology is an 1890 book about psychology by William James. Is it true? Did William James write The Principles of Psychology? An American philosopher and psychologist who trained to be a physician before getting into psychology. And the 4 key concepts, please note this down. The 4 key concepts in James's book are stream of consciousness, emotion, habit, and will. So what is the answer? True. True. William James's Principles of Psychology, 1890, sorry. William James's Principles of Psychology. Okay? Stream of consciousness, habit, will, emotion. Got it? Right. Next. Who said this about Shakespeare? To begin then with Shakespeare, he was the man who, of all modern and perhaps ancient poets, had the largest and most comprehensive soul. Was it Ben Jonson, Dryden, Samuel Johnson, or Pope? Who said this about Shakespeare? It was Dryden. Dryden said this about Shakespeare. Dryden said this about Shakespeare. Are you all enjoying? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. The savage mind, also translated as wild thought, is a 1962 work of Dash by the anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss. So what is this work about? Is it about structural semiotics, structural anthropology, psychology and behaviorism, or ethics of representation? The Savage Mind. Yes, it's a work of structural anthropology. The Savage Mind is a work of structural anthropology by Claude Lévi-Strauss, and it was published in 1962. Okay, The Savage Mind, Claude Lévi-Strauss, Structural Anthropology, 1962. Got it? Yes. History and Class Consciousness, Studies in Marxist Dialectics is a 1923 book by Dash, in which the author re-emphasizes the philosopher Hegel's influence on the philosopher Karl Marx, analyzes the concept of class consciousness, and attempts a philosophical justification of Bolshevism. So who wrote this work? History and Class Consciousness. It's by Georg Lukács. Georg Lukács. So if I ask you more questions, will you stay with me? Or do you have a hurry to leave? Are you all okay to stay with me for 10 more minutes? Okay. Tell me, the terms simulacra and simulacrum were coined by which theorist? Simulacrum, coined by Jean Baudrillard. Jean Baudrillard, in his discussion of the changing relationship between the real and the original in postmodern culture. Because according to Baudrillard, in this current scenario, the thin line which is there between illusion and reality is getting blurred day by day. So Baudrillard talked about simulacra, simulation, simulacra, simulacrum. Okay, next. I will ask you some mixed questions. Okay, who wrote Sketches by Boz? Who wrote Sketches by Boz? Dickens. Dickens. Next, tell me. Johnson's dictionary was published in which year? Johnson's dictionary was published in 1755. 1755. Okay. Tell me at least one example of a slave narrative. Give me one example of a slave narrative. Slave narrative. It means it has to be an autobiography. The autobiography of Frederick Douglass. That's a slave narrative. Also, the narrative of Olada Equiano is famous. Right? Then Harriet Jacobs. Okay. Socialist realism was most famous in which country? The use of socialist realism. It was mostly popular in Russia. Mostly popular in Russia. Next, tell me. Which play came first? The Jew of Malta or Hamlet? The Jew of Malta or Hamlet? Yes. The Jew of Malta came first. Okay, next tell me. Who wrote An Anatomy of Melancholy? Who wrote An Anatomy of Melancholy? Robert Burton. Robert Burton wrote An Anatomy of Melancholy, right? Which was the first sonnet cycle in English? Which was the first sonnet cycle in English? Sydney's Astrophel and Stella. Sydney's Astrophel and Stella. Okay. Sonnets from the Portuguese by Elizabeth Barrett Browning was published in which year? Sonnets from the Portuguese. It was published in 1850. 1850. Okay. Holinshed's Chronicles was a major source for Shakespeare's plays. True or false? Holinshed's Chronicles was a major source for Shakespeare's plays. True. Very much true indeed. Right. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage was first published in which year? Childe Harold's Pilgrimage was first published in 1812. 1812. Very good. Next, tell me. Not this. We don't need all this. The rhyme of the ancient mariner has strong elements of Christianity and it very strongly talks about the concepts of sin and redemption. True or false? True. It strongly talks about the concepts of sin and redemption. Okay. What was Stationer's Company? What was Stationer's Company? Can anyone tell me what was Stationer's Company? It was the London Craft Guild of Printers. It was a guild of printers incorporated by Mary in 1557. They were a guild of printers. The Stationer's Company, yes. Okay. Next, tell me. We don't need all this. There are too much. Okay. Roland Barthes' Mythologies was published in which year? Roland Barthes' Mythologies was published in 1957. 1957. Okay. Next, tell me. What is subculture? Can anyone give me just a line about the term subculture? Who famously talked about subculture? Which theorist? Dick Hebdige. Dick Hebdige talked about subculture. Yes. So subculture means a community united by a specific identity or particular set of cultural practices and values which are not shared by the dominant culture. So it's a culture within the space of dominant culture. Okay? Okay. Next, tell me. Who wrote The Way of All Flesh? The Way of All Flesh is a novel by Samuel Butler. Samuel Butler. Okay. Next, tell me. Who wrote the short story The Diary of a Superfluous Man? Who wrote the short story The Diary of a Superfluous Man? Ivan Turgenev. Ivan Turgenev. Okay. Right. Who coined the term superstructuralism? Who coined the term superstructuralism? No. The term superstructuralism was coined by Richard Harland in the book Superstructuralism, the Philosophy of Structuralism and Post-Structuralism. I can just copy paste this thing for you to read up and keep it with you. Oh, okay. It just went to one person. Right? So the term superstructuralism was coined by Richard Harland in Superstructuralism, the Philosophy of Structuralism and Post-Structuralism, and he uses this term to cover the whole field of structuralism, post-structuralism, semiotics, Althusserian Marxists, Foucauldians, etc. It's an umbrella term for all these things. Superstructuralism, coined by Richard Harland. Got it? Many people are leaving the session. Why? You guys don't like this? Okay, anyways, I will just continue for a few more minutes. Okay. Next, tell me. Who edited the Westland? Who edited the Westland? Obviously, Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound. What is synesthesia? What is synesthesia? Synesthesia. It is the mixing of sensations. When you say things like hearing a color, seeing a smell, that's what we call synesthesia. They often give you match the followings like this. This time also in net, they give questions like this, where in one column they will give you some words, and in the next column there will be the meanings of those words, and you have to match them. So be very careful when you match such things. They are very easily scoring questions, but be very careful when you match the meanings with the words. Okay. Next, tell me. Who talked about syntagmatic paradigmatic? Who talked about syntagmatic paradigmatic? Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure talked about it. Very good. Okay. Um. Okay. So we have covered a lot for today. Just some. We have last 4 to 5 more minutes. So let me see what we can do. Next, tell me. Who wrote the book Distinction, which talks about how taste works on its own, has a politics of its own? Distinction. I won't tell you the subtitle. Distinction is by Pierre Bourdieu. Pierre Bourdieu wrote Distinction. Has Kant talked about sublime? Has Kant talked about sublime? Yes. Who else has talked about sublime? Who else has talked about sublime? Longinus, Edmund Burke, Longinus, Edmund Burke, Kant. They all have talked about the quality of sublime. Okay. Now tell me, who used the terms or who coined the terms tenor and vehicle? Tenor and vehicle. I.A. Richards. I.A. Richards. Okay. Okay. Who used the term tension in poetry? Tension. Alan Tate. Alan Tate. Okay. Who made the popular distinction of terror horror in the essay on the supernatural in poetry? This author distinguished between terror and horror. No. Anne Radcliffe, yes. Anne Radcliffe distinguished between terror and horror. Okay? Very good. Next, tell me. Who talked about theater of silence? Last time they asked about all these things. Theater of cruelty, theater of silence. So who talked about theater of silence? Jean-Jacques Bernard. I have given you the spelling here in case if you have any doubt. So Jean-Jacques Bernard talked about theater of silence. Theater of silence. Who talked about theater of cruelty? Who talked about theater of cruelty? Antonin Artaud. Antonin Artaud. And Jean-Jacques Bernard talked about theater of silence. Theater of silence. Okay? Okay. Okay. Who wrote the book, The Theater of the Absurd? Who wrote the book, The Theater of the Absurd? Martin Esslin. Martin Esslin. So tell me, it's a fill in the blank for you all. Third space is a theoretical term coined by Dash to describe a space in which we can overcome the problematic claims to cultural purity and homogeneity and embrace the hybridized nature of cultures. So, who talked about a third space which helps us to embrace the hybridity of cultures? Homi Bhabha, not Edward Sawyer. That's why please look at the key terms of the question. We all know Homi Bhabha very famously talked about ambivalence and hybridity. And according to Bhabha, third space is a space which helps us to overcome such typical claims of purity and homogeneity and instead prepares us to embrace hybridized multicultural forms of life. Is it clear? The distinction between Soya and Bhabha? Bhabha's third space. For Edward Soya, it was more like a lived space. Like very famously, always our Kalyani ma'am gives this example. When you are looking at a city from helicopter, that's different. But when you come to Kolkata and stay with us, you get a lived experience of this place. That's third space for Edward Soya. But for Bhabha, third space is a space which prepares us to embrace hybridized multicultural forms of life. So lived experience, lived space versus spaces of hybridity. Clear? Okay. Yes, yes. Robert Hume's classification was different, but Anne Radcliffe's classification was different. Okay. Robert Hume talked about in a different way, but Anne Radcliffe talked about terror and horror in a different way. Okay. Next, tell me. Okay, we just have 1 more minute left. Can you give me some examples of time novels? Time novels are novels which employ the stream of consciousness technique and in which the use of time and time as a theme is of preeminent importance. So time is a character in these novels. Give me some examples of time novels. Yes. Then James Joyce's Ulysses, A Dance to the Music of Time by Anthony Powell. These are also very famous examples. Then Dorothy Richardson's Pilgrimage. So time novels are very important. Okay. And last question for you all. Who wrote the topographical poem Cooper's Hill? who wrote the topographical poem Cooper's Hill. It's by John Denham. Sir John Denham. Clear? All right. So all of you, please study really well. It was our last session for paper 2 before the exam. I know all of you will rock the exam. All the very, very best from the entire team of Vallath. Go and rock your exam. Please stay calm, stay patient. Right? Yes. Thank you so much for joining us every day and staying till the end. Love you all. Please stay calm and have a lovely exam ahead. Okay? Bye. Take care. Good night.